Chapter 51. A Passion. The day of his arrival, on returning from the Palais Royal, Athos, as we have seen, went straight to his hotel in the Rue Saint-Honoré. He there found the Vicomte de Bragelonne waiting for him in his chamber, chatting with Grimaud. It was not an easy thing to talk with this old servant. Two men only possessed the secret, Athos and D'Artagnan. The first succeeded because Grimaud sought to make him speak himself, D'Artagnan, on the contrary, because he knew how to make Grimaud talk. Raoul was occupied in making him describe the voyage to England, and Grimaud had related it in all its details, with a limited number of gestures and 8 words, neither more nor less. He had at first indicated by an undulating movement of his hand that his master and he had crossed the sea. Upon some expedition? Raoul had asked. Grimaud, by bending down his head, had answered, yes. When Monsieur le Comte incurred much danger? Asked Raoul. Neither too much nor too little, was replied by a shrug of the shoulders. But still, what sort of danger? Insisted Raoul. Grimaud pointed to the sword, he pointed to the fire and to a musket that was hanging on the wall. Monsieur le Comte had an enemy there then? Cried Raoul. Monk, replied Grimaud. It is strange, continued Raoul, that Monsieur le Comte persists in considering me a novice, and not allowing me to partake the honor and danger of his adventure. Grimaud smiled. It was at this moment Athos came in. The host was lighting him up the stairs, and Grimaud, recognizing the step of his master, hastened to meet him, which cut short the conversation. But Raoul was launched on the sea of interrogatories and did not stop. Taking both hands of the Comte, with warm but respectful tenderness, "How is it, monsieur," said he, "that you have set out upon a dangerous voyage without bidding me adieu, without commanding the aid of my sword, of myself, who ought to be your support? Now I have the strength, whom you have brought up like a man. Monsieur, can you expose me to the cruel trial of never seeing you again?" "Who told you, Raoul?" said the Comte, placing his cloak and hat in the hands of Grimaud, who had unbuckled his sword. "Who told you that my voyage was a dangerous one?" "I," said Grimaud. "And why did you do so?" said Athos sternly. Grimaud was embarrassed. Raoul came to his assistance by answering for him. "It is natural, monsieur, that our good Grimaud should tell me the truth in what concerns you. By whom should you be loved and supported if not by me?" Athos did not reply. He made a friendly motion to Grimaud, which sent him out of the room. He then seated himself in a fauteuil, whilst Raoul remained standing before him. "But it is true," continued Raoul, "that your voyage was an expedition, and that steel and fire threatened you?" "Say no more about that, Vicomte," said Athos mildly. "I set out hastily, it is true, but the service of King Charles II required a prompt departure. As to your anxiety, I thank you for it, and I know that I can depend on you. You have not wanted for anything, Vicomte, in my absence, have you?" "No, monsieur, thank you. I left orders with Blaisois to pay you 100 pistoles, if you should stand in need of money." "Monsieur, I have not seen Blaisois." "You have been without money, then?" "Monsieur, I had 30 pistoles left from the sale of the horses I took in my last campaign, and le Prince had the kindness to allow me to win 200 pistoles at his play table 3 months ago." "Do you play?" "I don't like that, Raoul." "I never play, monsieur. It was le Prince who ordered me to hold his cards at Chantilly, one night when a courier came to him from the king. I won, and le Prince commanded me to take the stakes." "Is that a practice in the household, Raoul?" asked Athos with a frown. "Yes, monsieur, every week. Le Prince affords, upon one occasion or another, a similar advantage to one of his gentlemen. There are 50 gentlemen in his Highness's household. It was my turn." "Very well. You went into Spain, then?" "Yes, monsieur, I made a very delightful and interesting journey." "You have been back a month, have you not?" "Yes, monsieur." "And in the course of that month?" "In that month." "What have you done?" "My duty, monsieur." "Have you not been home to La Fere?" Raoul colored. Athos looked at him with a fixed but tranquil expression. "You would be wrong not to believe me," said Raoul. "I feel that I colored, and in spite of myself. The question you did me the honor to ask me is of a nature to raise in me much emotion. I color then because I am agitated, not because I meditate a falsehood. I know, Raoul, you never lie." "No, monsieur. Besides, my young friend, you would be wrong. What I wanted to say, I know quite well, monsieur. You would ask me if I have not been to Blois?" "Exactly so." "I have not been there. I have not even seen the person to whom you allude." Raoul's voice trembled as he pronounced these words. Athos, a sovereign judge in all matters of delicacy, immediately added, "Raoul, you answer me with a painful feeling. You are unhappy." Very, monsieur, you have forbidden me to go to Blois, or to see Mademoiselle de la Valliere again. Here the young man stopped. That dear name, so delightful to pronounce, made his heart bleed, although so sweet upon his lips. And I have acted rightly, Raoul? Athos hastened to reply. I am neither an unjust nor a barbarous father. I respect true love, but I look forward for you to a future, an immense future. A new reign is about to break upon us like a fresh dawn. War calls upon a young king full of chivalric spirit. What is wanting to assist this heroic ardor is a battalion of young and free lieutenants who would rush to the fight with enthusiasm and fall crying, Vive le Roi, instead of, Adieu, my dear wife. You understand that, Raoul? However brutal my reasoning may appear, I conjure you, then, to believe me, and to turn away your thoughts from those early days of youth in which you took up this habit of love, days of effeminate carelessness, which soften the heart and render it incapable of consuming those strong bitter draughts called glory and adversity. Therefore, Raoul, I repeat to you, you should see in my counsel only the desire of being useful to you, only the ambition of seeing you prosper. I believe you capable of becoming a remarkable man. March alone, and you will march better and more quickly. You have commanded, monsieur, replied Raoul, and I obey. Commanded, cried Athos. Is it thus you reply to me? I have commanded you. You distort my words as you misconceive my intentions. I do not command you, I request you. No, monsieur, you have commanded, said Raoul persistently. Had you requested me, your request is even more effective than your order. I have not seen Mademoiselle de la Valliere again. But you are unhappy. You are unhappy, insisted Athos. Raoul made no reply. I find you pale, I find you dull. The sentiment is strong, then? It is a passion, replied Raoul. No, a habit. Monsieur, you know I have traveled much, that I have passed 2 years far away from her. A habit would yield to an absence of 2 years, I believe, whereas on my return I loved not more, that was impossible, but as much. Mademoiselle de la Valliere is for me the one lady above all others, but you are for me a god upon earth. To you I sacrifice everything. You are wrong, said Athos. I have no longer any right over you. Age has emancipated you. You no longer even stand in need of my consent. Besides, I will not refuse my consent after what you have told me. Marry Mademoiselle de la Valliere if you like. Raoul was startled, but suddenly, You are very kind, monsieur, said he, and your concession excites my warmest gratitude, but I will not accept it. Then you now refuse? Yes, monsieur. I will not oppose you in anything, Raoul. But you have at the bottom of your heart an idea against this marriage. It is not your choice. That is true. That is sufficient to make me resist. I will wait. Beware, Raoul. What you are now saying is serious. I know it is, monsieur. As I said, I will wait. Until I die, said Athos, much agitated. Oh, monsieur, cried Raoul with tears in his eyes, is it possible that you should wound my heart thus? I have never given you cause of complaint. Dear boy, that is true, murmured Athos, pressing his lips violently together to conceal the emotion of which he was no longer master. No, I will no longer afflict you, only I do not comprehend what you mean by waiting. Will you wait till you love no longer? Ah, for that, no, monsieur. I will wait till you change your opinion. I should wish to put the matter to a test, Raoul. I should like to see if Mademoiselle de la Valliere will wait as you do. I hope so, monsieur. But take care, Raoul. Suppose she did not wait? Ah, you are young, so confiding, so loyal. Women are changeable. You have never spoken ill to me of women, monsieur. You have never had to complain of them. Why should you doubt of Mademoiselle de la Valliere? That is true, said Athos, casting down his eyes. I have never spoken ill to you of women. I have never had to complain of them. Mademoiselle de la Valliere never gave birth to a suspicion. But when we are looking forward, we must go even to exceptions, even to improbabilities. If I say Mademoiselle de la Valliere should not wait for you? How, monsieur? If she turned her eyes another way. If she looked favorably upon another, do you mean, monsieur? Said Raoul, pale with agony. Exactly. Well, monsieur, I would kill him, said Raoul simply, and all the men whom Mademoiselle de la Valliere should choose, until one of them had killed me, or Mademoiselle de la Valliere had restored me her heart. Athos started. I thought, resumed he in an agitated voice, that you called my just now your God, your law in this world. Oh, said Raoul, trembling, you would forbid me the duel? Suppose I did forbid it, Raoul? You would not forbid me to hope, monsieur, consequently you would not forbid me to die. Athos raised his eyes toward the Vicomte. He had pronounced these words with the most melancholy look. Enough, said Athos after a long silence. Enough of this subject upon which we both go too far. Live as well as you are able, Raoul, perform your duties, love Mademoiselle de la Valliere. In a word, act like a man, since you have attained the age of a man. Only do not forget that I love you tenderly, and that you profess to love me. Ah, Monsieur le Comte, cried Raoul, pressing the hand of Athos to his heart. Enough, dear boy, leave me, I want rest. A propos, D'Artagnan has returned from England with me. You owe him a visit. I will pay it, monsieur, with great pleasure. I love Monsieur d'Artagnan exceedingly. You are right in doing so. He is a worthy man and a brave cavalier, who loves you dearly. I am sure of that. Do you know his address? At the Louvre, I suppose, or wherever the king is. Does he not command the Musketeers? No, at present D'Artagnan is absent on leave. He is resting for a while. Do not, therefore, seek him at the posts of his service. You will hear of him at the house of a certain Planchet. His former lackey? Exactly, turned grocer. I know, Rue de Lombards? Somewhere thereabouts, or Rue de Arcis. I will find it, monsieur, I will find it. You will say 1,000 kind things to him on my part, and ask him to come and dine with me before I set out for La Fere. Yes, monsieur. Good night, Raoul. Monsieur, I see you wear an order I never saw you wear before. Accept my compliments. The fleece, that is true. A bauble, my boy, which no longer amuses an old child like myself. Good night, Raoul. Chapter 52. D'Artagnan's Lesson. Raoul did not meet with D'Artagnan the next day as he had hoped. He only met with Planchet, whose joy was great at seeing the young man again, and who contrived to pay him 2 or 3 little soldierly compliments, savoring very little of the grocer's shop. But as Raoul was returning the next day from Vincennes at the head of 50 dragoons confided to him by Monsieur le Prince, he perceived in La Place Baudoyer a man with his nose in the air, examining a house as we examine a horse we have a fancy to buy. This man, dressed in a citizen costume buttoned up like a military pourpoint, a very small hat on his head, but a long shagreen-mounted sword by his side, turned his head as soon as he heard the steps of the horses, and left off looking at the house to look at the dragoons. It was simply D'Artagnan, D'Artagnan on foot, D'Artagnan with his hands behind him, passing a little review upon the dragoons after having reviewed the buildings. Not a man, not a tag, not a horse's hoof escaped his inspection. Raoul rode at the side of his troop. D'Artagnan perceived him the last. Said he, Mordioux. I was not mistaken, cried Raoul, turning his horse towards him. Mistaken, no. Good day to you, replied the ex-musketeer, whilst Raoul eagerly pressed the hand of his old friend. Take care, Raoul, said D'Artagnan. The second horse of the 5th rank will lose a shoe before he gets to the Pont Marie. He has only 2 nails left in his off forefoot. Wait a minute, I will come back, said Raoul. Can you quit your detachment? The cornet is there to take my place. Then you will come and dine with me? Most willingly, Monsieur d'Artagnan. Be quick then, leave your horse or make them give me one. I prefer coming back on foot with you. Raoul hastened to give notice to the cornet, who took his post. He then dismounted, gave his horse to one of the dragoons, and with great delight seized the arm of D'Artagnan, who had watched him during all these little evolutions with the satisfaction of a connoisseur. What, do you come from Vincennes? Said he. Yes, Monsieur le Chevalier. And the cardinal? Is very ill. It is even reported he is dead. Are you on good terms with Fouquet? Asked D'Artagnan, with a disdainful movement of the shoulders, proving that the death of Mazarin did not affect him beyond measure. With Fouquet, said Raoul, I do not know him. So much the worse. So much the worse. For a new king always seeks to get good men in his employment. Oh, the king means no harm, replied the young man. I say nothing about the crown, cried D'Artagnan. I am speaking of the king that is Fouquet if the cardinal is dead. You must contrive to stand well with Fouquet, if you do not wish to moulder away all your life as I have mouldered. It is true you have, fortunately, other protectors. Le Prince, for instance. Worn out. Le Comte de la Fere? Athos. That's different. Yes, Athos, and if you have any wish to make your way in England, you cannot apply to a better person. I can even say without too much vanity, that I myself have some credit at the court of Charles II. There is a king, God speed him. Ah! Cried Raoul with the natural curiosity of well-born young people, while listening to experience and courage. Yes, a king who amuses himself, it is true, but who has had a sword in his hand and can appreciate useful men. Athos is on good terms with Charles II. Take service there, and leave these scoundrels of contractors and farmers general, who steal as well with French hands as others have done with Italian hands. Leave the little sniveling king, who is going to give us another reign of Francis II. Do you know anything of history, Raoul? Yes, Monsieur le Chevalier. Do you know then that Francis II had always the earache? No, I did not know that. That Charles IV had always the headache. Indeed. And Henry III had always the stomachache. Raoul began to laugh. Well, my dear friend, Louis XIV always has the heartache. It is deplorable to see a king sighing from morning till night without saying once in the course of the day ventre saint gris, corbeau, or anything to rouse one. Was that the reason why you quitted the service, Monsieur le Chevalier? Yes. But you yourself, M. d'Artagnan, are throwing the handle after the axe. You will not make a fortune. Oh, I, replied D'Artagnan in a careless tone, I am settled, I had some family property. Raoul looked at him. The poverty of D'Artagnan was proverbial. A Gascon, he exceeded in ill luck all the Gasconades of France and Navarre. Raoul had 100 times heard Job and D'Artagnan named together, as the twins Romulus and Remus. D'Artagnan caught Raoul's look of astonishment. And has not your father told you I have been in England? Yes, Monsieur le Chevalier. And that I there met with a very lucky chance? No, monsieur, I did not know that. Yes, a very worthy friend of mine, a great nobleman, the Viceroy of Scotland and Ireland, has endowed me with an inheritance. An inheritance? And a good one too. Then you are rich? Bah! Receive my sincere congratulation. Thank you. Look, that is my house. Place de Grève. Yes, don't you like this quarter? On the contrary, the lookout over the water is pleasant. What a pretty old house. The sign Notre Dame, it is an old cabaret, which I have transformed into a private house in 2 days. But the cabaret is still open? Pardieu. And where do you lodge then? I lodge with Planchet. You said just now, this is my house. I said so because, in fact, it is my house. I have bought it. Ah, said Raoul. At 10 years' purchase, my dear Raoul, a superb affair, I bought the house for 30,000 livres. It has a garden which opens to the Rue de la Mortillerie. The cabaret lets for 1,000 livres with the first story, the garret or second floor for 500 livres. Indeed. Yes, indeed. 500 livres for a garret? Why, it is not habitable. Therefore no one inhabits it. Only, you see, this garret has 2 windows which look out upon the place. Yes, monsieur. Well then, every time anybody is broken on the wheel or hung, quartered, or burnt, these 2 windows let for 20 pistoles. Oh, said Raoul with horror. It is disgusting, is it not? Said D'Artagnan. Oh, repeated Raoul. It is disgusting, but so it is. These Parisian cockneys are sometimes real anthropophagi. I cannot conceive how men Christians can make such speculation. That is true. As for myself, continued D'Artagnan, if I inhabited that house, on days of execution I would shut it up to the very keyholes, but I do not inhabit it. And you let the garret for 500 livres? To the ferocious cabaretier who sublets it. I said, then 1,500 livres. The natural interest of money, said Raoul, 5%. Exactly so. I then have left the side of the house at the back, storerooms and cellars, inundated every winter, 200 livres, and the garden, which is very fine, well planted, well shaded under the walls and the portal of Saint Gervais Saint Protais, 1,300 livres. 1,300 livres. Why, that is royal. This is the whole history. I strongly suspect some canon of the parish. These canons are all rich as Croesus. I suspect some canon of having hired the garden to take his pleasure in. The tenant has given the name of M. Goddard. That is either a false name or a real name. If true, he is a canon. If false, he is some unknown, but of what consequence is it to me? He always pays in advance. I had also an idea just now, when I met you, of buying a house in the Place Baudoyer, the back premises of which join my garden, and would make a magnificent property. Your dragoons interrupted my calculations. But come, let us take the Rue de la Vannerie, that will lead us straight to M. Planchet's. D'Artagnan mended his pace and conducted Raoul to Planchet's dwelling, a chamber of which the grocer had given up to his old master. Planchet was out, but the dinner was ready. There was a remains of military regularity and punctuality preserved in the grocer's household. D'Artagnan returned to the subject of Raoul's future. Your father brings you up rather strictly, said he. Justly, Monsieur le Chevalier. Oh yes, I know Athos is just, but close perhaps? A royal hand, Monsieur d'Artagnan. Well, never want, my boy. If ever you stand in need of a few pistoles, the old Musketeer is at hand. My dear Monsieur d'Artagnan, do you play a little? Never. Successful with the ladies, then? Oh, my little Aramis. That, my dear friend, costs even more than play. It is true we fight when we lose, that is a compensation. Bah! That little sniveler the king makes winners give him his revenge. What a reign! My poor Raoul, what a reign! When we think that, in my time, the Musketeers were besieged in their houses like Hector and Priam in the city of Troy, and the women wept, and then the walls laughed, and then 500 beggarly fellows clapped their hands and cried, "Kill! Kill!" when not one Musketeer was hurt. Mordioux, you will never see anything like that. You are very hard upon the king, my dear Monsieur d'Artagnan, and yet you scarcely know him. Listen, Raoul. Day by day, hour by hour, take note of my words, I will predict what he will do. The cardinal being dead, he will fret. Very well, that is the least silly thing he will do, particularly if he does not shed a tear. And then? Why, then he will get M. Fouquet to allow him a pension, and will go and compose verses at Fontainebleau, upon some Mancini or other, whose eyes the queen will scratch out. She is a Spaniard, you see, this queen of ours, and she has for mother-in-law Madame Anne of Austria. I know something of the Spaniards of the House of Austria. And next? Well, after having torn the silver lace from the uniforms of his Swiss, because lace is too expensive, he will dismount his Musketeers, because oats and hay of a horse cost 5 souls a day. Oh, do not say that. Of what consequence is it to me? I'm no longer a Musketeer, am I? Let them be on horseback, let them be on foot, let them carry a larding pin, a spit, a sword, or nothing, what is it to me? My dear Monsieur d'Artagnan, I beseech you speak no more ill of the king. I am almost in his service, and my father would be very angry with me for having heard, even from your mouth, words injurious to his majesty. Your father, he is a knight in every bad cause. Pardieu. Yes, your father is a brave man, a Caesar, it is true, but a man without perception. Now, my dear chevalier, exclaimed Raoul, laughing, are you going to speak ill of my father, of him you call the great Athos? Truly you are in a bad vein today. Riches render you as sour as poverty renders other people. Pardieu. You are right. I am a rascal, and in my dotage, I am an unhappy wretch grown old, a tent cord untwisted, a pierced cuirass, a boot without a sole, a spur without a rowel. But do me the pleasure to add one thing. What is that, my dear Monsieur d'Artagnan? Simply say, Mazarin was a pitiful wretch. Perhaps he is dead. More the reason, I say, was, if I did not hope that he was dead, I would entreat you to say, Mazarin is a pitiful wretch. Come, say so, for love of me. Well, I will. Say it. Mazarin was a pitiful wretch, said Raoul, smiling at the Musketeer, who roared with laughter as in his best days. A moment, said the latter, you have spoken my first proposition, here is the conclusion of it. Repeat, Raoul, repeat, but I regret Mazarin. Chevalier. You will not say it? Well then, I will say it twice for you. But you would regret Mazarin? And they were still laughing and discussing this profession of principles, when one of the shop boys entered. A letter, monsieur, said he, for M. d'Artagnan. Thank you, give it me, cried the Musketeer. The handwriting of Monsieur le Comte, said Raoul. Yes, yes. And D'Artagnan broke the seal. Dear friend, said Athos, a person has just been here to beg me to seek for you on the part of the king. Seek me, said D'Artagnan, letting the paper fall upon the table. Raoul picked it up and continued to read aloud. Make haste. His Majesty is very anxious to speak to you and expects you at the Louvre. Expects me? Again repeated the Musketeer. He, laughed Raoul. Oh, replied D'Artagnan. What the devil can this mean? Chapter 53. The King. The first moment of surprise over, D'Artagnan reperused Athos's note. It is strange, said he, that the king should send for me. Why so? Said Raoul. Do you not think, monsieur, that the king must regret such a servant as you? Oh, cried the officer, laughing with all his might. You are poking fun at me, Master Raoul. If the king had regretted me, he would not have let me leave him. No, I see in it something better or worse if you like. Worse? What can that be, Monsieur le Chevalier? You are young, you are a boy, you are admirable. Oh, how I should like to be as you are. To be but 24, with an unfortunate brow, under which the brain is void of everything but women, love, and good intentions. Oh, Raoul, as long as you have not received the smiles of kings, the confidence of queens, as long as you have not had 2 cardinals killed under you, the one a tiger, the other a fox, as long as you have not. But what is the good of all this trifling? We must part, Raoul. How you say the word. What a serious face. But the occasion is worthy of it. Listen to me. I have a very good recommendation to tender you. I am all attention, Monsieur d'Artagnan. You will go and inform your father of my departure. Your departure? Pardieu. You will tell him I am gone into England, and that I am living in my little country house. In England you, and the king's orders? You get more and more silly. Do you imagine that I am going to the Louvre, to place myself at the disposal of that little crowned wolf cub? The king a wolf cub? Why, Monsieur le Chevalier, you are mad. On the contrary, I never was so sane. You do not know what he wants to do with me, this worthy son of Louis le Just. But, Mordioux, that is policy. He wishes to ensconce me snugly in the Bastille, purely and simply. Look you. What for? Cried Raoul, terrified at what he heard. On account of what I told him one day at Blois. I was warm. He remembers it. You told him what? That he was mean, cowardly, and silly. Good God! Cried Raoul. Is it possible that such words should have issued from your mouth? Perhaps I don't give the letter of my speech, but I give the sense of it. But did not the king have you arrested immediately? By whom? It was I who commanded the Musketeers. He must have commanded me to convey myself to prison. I would never have consented. I would have resisted myself. And then I went into England. No more D'Artagnan. Now the cardinal is dead, or nearly so. They learn that I am in Paris, and they lay their hands on me. The cardinal was your protector? The cardinal knew me. He knew certain particularities of me. I also knew some of his. We appreciated each other mutually. And then, on rendering his soul to the devil, he would recommend Anne of Austria to make me the inhabitant of a safe place. Go then and find your father, relate the fact to him, and adieu. My dear Monsieur d'Artagnan, said Raoul, very much agitated after having looked out the window, you cannot even fly. Why not? Because there is below an officer of the Swiss guards waiting for you. Well? Well, he will arrest you. D'Artagnan broke into a Homeric laugh. Oh, I know very well that you will resist, that you will fight even. I know very well that you will prove the conqueror, but that amounts to rebellion, and you are an officer yourself, knowing what discipline is. Devil of a boy, how logical that is, grumbled D'Artagnan. You approve of it, do you not? Yes, instead of passing into the street where that idiot is waiting for me, I will slip quietly out at the back. I have a horse in the stable, and a good one. I will ride him to death. My means permit me to do so, and by killing one horse after another, I shall arrive at Boulogne in 11 hours. I know the road. Only tell your father one thing. What is that? That is, that the thing he knows about is placed at Planchet's house, except a fifth, and that. But, my dear D'Artagnan, rest assured that if you fly, 2 things will be said of you. What are they, my dear friend? The first, that you have been afraid. And who will dare to say that? The king first. Well, but he will tell the truth. I am afraid. The second, that you knew yourself guilty. Guilty of what? Why, of the crimes they wish to impute to you. That is true again. So, then, you advise me to go and get myself made a prisoner in the Bastille? Le Comte de la Fere would advise you just as I do. Pardieu. I know he would, said D'Artagnan thoughtfully. You are right, I shall not escape. But if they cast me into the Bastille? We will get you out again, said Raoul with a quiet, calm air. Mordioux. You said that after a brave fashion, Raoul, said D'Artagnan, seizing his hand. That savors of Athos distinctly. Well, I will go then. Do not forget my last word. Except a fifth, said Raoul. Yes, you are a fine boy. And I wish you to add one thing to that last word. Speak, Chevalier. It is that if you cannot get me out of the Bastille and I remain there, oh, that will be so, and I shall be a detestable prisoner. I, who have been a passable man, in that case I give 3/5 to you and the 4th to your father. Chevalier. Mordioux. If you will have some masses said for me, you are welcome. That being said, D'Artagnan took his belt from the hook, girded on his sword, took a hat the feather of which was fresh, and held his hand out to Raoul, who threw himself into his arms. When in the shop, he cast a quick glance at the shop lads, who looked upon the scene with a pride mingled with some inquietude. Then plunging his hands into a chest of currants, he went straight to the officer who was waiting for him at the door. Those features, Can it be you, Monsieur de Friedisch? Cried D'Artagnan gaily. What, do we arrest our friends? Arrest? Whispered the lads among themselves. Ja, it is I, Monsieur d'Artagnan. Good day to you, said the Swiss in his mountain patois. Must I give you up my sword? I warn you that it is long and heavy. You had better let me wear it to the Louvre. I feel quite lost in the streets without a sword, and you would be more at a loss that I should with two. The king has given me no orders about it, replied the Swiss, so keep your sword. Well, that is very polite on the part of the king. Let us go at once. Monsieur Friedisch was not a talker, and D'Artagnan had too many things to think about to say much. From Planchet's shop to the Louvre was not far. They arrived in 10 minutes. It was a dark night. De Friedisch wanted to enter by the wicket. No, said D'Artagnan, you would lose time by that. Take the little staircase. The Swiss did as D'Artagnan advised, and conducted him to the vestibule of the king's cabinet. When arrived there, he bowed to his prisoner, and without saying anything returned to his post. D'Artagnan had not had time to ask why his sword was not taken from him, when the door of the cabinet opened, and a valet de chambre called, D'Artagnan. The Musketeer assumed his parade carriage and entered with his large eyes wide open, his brow calm, his mustache stiff. The king was seated at a table writing. He did not disturb himself when the step of the Musketeer resounded on the floor. He did not even turn his head. D'Artagnan advanced as far as the middle of the room, and seeing that the king paid no attention to him, and suspecting besides that this was nothing but affectation, a sort of tormenting preamble to the explanation that was preparing, he turned his back on the prince, and began to examine the frescoes on the cornices and the cracks in the ceiling. This maneuver was accompanied by a little tacit monologue. You want to humble me, do you? You whom I have seen so young, you whom I have saved as I would my own child, you whom I have served as I would a god, that is to say, for nothing. Wait a while. Wait a while. You shall see what a man can do who has suffered the air of the fire of the Huguenots, under the beard of Monsieur le Cardinal, the true cardinal. At this moment Louis turned round. Are you there, Monsieur d'Artagnan? Said he. D'Artagnan saw the movement and imitated it. Yes, sire, said he. Very well, have the goodness to wait till I have cast this up. D'Artagnan made no reply, he only bowed. That is polite enough, thought he, I have nothing to say. Louis made a violent dash with his pen, and threw it angrily away. Go on, work yourself up, thought the Musketeer, you will put me at my ease. You shall find I did not empty the bag the other day at Blois. Louis rose from his seat, passed his hand over his brow, then stopping opposite to D'Artagnan, he looked at him with an air at once imperious and kind. What the devil does he want with me? I wish he would begin, thought the Musketeer. Monsieur, said the king, you know without doubt that Monsieur le Cardinal is dead? I suspected so, sire. You know that, consequently, I am master in my own kingdom? That is not a thing that dates from the death of Monsieur le Cardinal, sire. A man is always master in his own house when he wishes to be so. Yes, but do you not remember all you said to me at Blois? Now we come to it, thought D'Artagnan. I was not deceived. Well, so much the better, it is a sign that my scent is tolerably keen yet. You do not answer me, said Louis. Sire, I think I recollect. You only think? It is so long ago. If you do not remember, I do. You said to me, listen with attention. I shall listen with all my ears, sire, for it is very likely the conversation will turn in a fashion very interesting to me. Louis once more looked at the Musketeer. The latter smoothed the feather of his hat, then his mustache, and waited bravely. Louis XIV continued, You quitted my service, monsieur, after having told me the whole truth? Yes, sire. That is, after having declared to me all you thought to be true, with regard to my mode of thinking and acting. That is always a merit. You began by telling me that you had served my family 30 years and were fatigued. I said so, yes, sire. And you afterwards admitted that that fatigue was a pretext, and that discontent was the real cause. I was discontented, in fact, but that discontent has never betrayed itself, that I know of, and if, like a man of heart, I have spoken out before your majesty, I have not even thought of the matter before anybody else. Do not excuse yourself, D'Artagnan, but continue to listen to me. When making me the reproach that you were discontented, you received in reply a promise. Wait. Is that not true? Yes, sire, as true as what I told you. You answered me, hereafter. No, now, immediately. Do not excuse yourself, I tell you. It was natural, but you had no charity for your poor prince, Monsieur d'Artagnan. Sire, charity for a king on the part of a poor soldier. You understand me very well. You knew that I stood in need of it. You knew very well that I was not master. You knew very well that my hope was in the future. Now, you answered me when I spoke of the future, my discharge, and that directly. That is true, murmured D'Artagnan, biting his mustache. You did not flatter me when I was in distress, added Louis. But, said D'Artagnan, raising his head nobly, if I did not flatter your majesty when poor, neither did I betray you. I have shed my blood for nothing. I have watched like a dog at a door, knowing full well that neither bread nor bone would be thrown to me. I, although poor likewise, asked nothing of your majesty but the discharge you speak of. I know you are a brave man, but I was a young man, and you ought to have had some indulgence for me. What had you to reproach the king with? That he left King Charles II without assistance? Let us say further, that he did not marry Mademoiselle de Mancini? When saying these words, the king fixed upon the Musketeer a searching look. Ah, thought the latter, he is doing far more than remembering, he divines. The devil. Your sentence, continued Louis, fell upon the king and fell upon the man. But, Monsieur D'Artagnan, that weakness, for you considered it a weakness? D'Artagnan made no reply. You reproached me also with regard to Monsieur, the defunct cardinal. Now, Monsieur le Cardinal, did he not bring me up, did he not support me? Elevating himself and supporting himself at the same time, I admit, but the benefit was discharged. As an ingrate or an egotist, would you then have better loved or served me? Sire. We will say no more about it, monsieur. It would only create in you too many regrets and me too much pain. D'Artagnan was not convinced. The young king, in adopting a tone of hauteur with him, did not forward his purpose. You have since reflected? Resumed Louis. Upon what, sire? Asked D'Artagnan politely. Why, upon all that I have said to you, monsieur. Yes, sire, no doubt. And you have only waited for an opportunity of retracting your words? Sire. You hesitate, it seems. I do not understand what your majesty did me the honor to say to me. Louis's brow became cloudy. Have the goodness to excuse me, sire. My understanding is particularly thick. Things do not penetrate it without difficulty. But it is true, once they get in, they remain there. Yes, you appear to have a memory. Almost as good a one as your majesty's. Then give me quickly one solution. My time is valuable. What have you been doing since your discharge? Making my fortune, sire. The expression is crude, Monsieur D'Artagnan. Your majesty takes it in bad part, certainly. I entertain nothing but the profoundest respect for the king, and if I have been impolite, which might be excused by my long sojourn in camps and barracks, your majesty is too much above me to be offended at a word that innocently escapes from a soldier. In fact, I know you performed a brilliant action in England, monsieur. I only regret that you have broken your promise. I, cried D'Artagnan. Doubtless. You engaged your word not to serve any other prince on quitting my service. Now it was for King Charles II. That you undertook the marvelous carrying off of M. Monk. Pardon me, sire, it was for myself. And did you succeed? Like the captains of the 15th century, coups de main and adventures. What do you call succeeding? A fortune? 100,000 crowns, sire, which I now possess. That is, in 1 week 3 times as much money as I ever had in 50 years. It is a handsome sum. But you are ambitious, I perceive. I, sire? The quarter of that would be a treasure, and I swear to you I have no thought of augmenting it. What? You contemplate remaining idle? Yes, sire. You mean to drop the sword? That I have already done. Impossible, Monsieur D'Artagnan, said Louis firmly. But, sire. Well? And why, sire? Because it is my wish you should not, said the young prince in a voice so stern and imperious that D'Artagnan evinced surprise and even uneasiness. Will your majesty allow me one word of reply? Said he. Speak. I formed that resolution when I was poor and destitute. So be it. Go on. Now, when by my energy I have acquired a comfortable means of subsistence, would your majesty despoil me of my liberty? Your majesty would condemn me to the lowest, when I have gained the highest. Who gave you permission, monsieur, to fathom my designs or to reckon with me? Replied Louis in a voice almost angry. Who told you what I shall do or what you will yourself do? Sire, said the Musketeer quietly, as far as I see, freedom is not the order of the conversation, as it was on the day we came to an explanation at Blois. No, monsieur, everything is changed. I tender your majesty my sincere compliments upon that, but you don't believe it? I am not a great statesman, and yet I have my eye upon affairs. It seldom fails. Now, I do not see exactly as your majesty does, sire. The reign of Mazarin is over, but that of the financiers is begun. They have the money, your majesty will not often see much of it. To live under the paw of these hungry wolves is hard for a man who reckoned upon independence. At this moment someone scratched at the door of the cabinet. The king raised his head proudly. Your pardon, Monsieur d'Artagnan, said he, it is M. Colbert who comes to make me a report. Come in, M. Colbert. D'Artagnan drew back. Colbert entered with papers in his hand and went up to the king. There can be little doubt that the Gascon did not lose the opportunity of applying his keen, quick glance to the new figure which presented itself. Is the inquiry made? Yes, sire. And the opinion of the inquisitors? Is that the accused merit confiscation and death. Ah, said the king without changing countenance and casting an oblique look at D'Artagnan. And your own opinion, M. Colbert? Said he. Colbert looked at D'Artagnan as his turn. That imposing countenance checked the words upon his lips. Louis perceived this. Do not disturb yourself, said he. It is M. D'Artagnan. Do you not know M. D'Artagnan again? These two men looked at each other, D'Artagnan with eyes open and bright as the day, Colbert with his half-closed and dim. The frank intrepidity of the financier annoyed the other. The circumspection of the financier disgusted the soldier. This is the gentleman who made that brilliant stroke in England, said Colbert. And he bowed slightly to D'Artagnan. Ah, said the Gascon, this is the gentleman who clipped off the lace from the uniform of the Swiss. A praiseworthy piece of economy. The financier thought to pierce the musketeer, but the musketeer ran the financier through. Monsieur d'Artagnan, resumed the king, who had not remarked all the shades of which Mazarin would have missed not one, this concerns the farmers of the revenue who have robbed me, whom I am hanging, and whose death warrants I am about to sign. Oh, said D'Artagnan, starting. What did you say? Oh, nothing, sire. This is no business of mine. The king had already taken up the pen and was applying it to the paper. Sire, said Colbert in a subdued voice, I beg to warn your majesty, that if an example be necessary, there will be difficulty in the execution of your orders. What do you say? Said Louis. You must not conceal from yourself, continued Colbert quietly, that attacking the farmers general is attacking the superintendents. The two unfortunate guilty men in question are the particular friends of a powerful personage, and the punishment, which otherwise might be comfortably confined to the chatelet, will doubtless be a signal for disturbances. Louis colored and turned towards D'Artagnan, who took a slight bite at his mustache, not without a smile of pity for the financier, and for the king who had to listen to him so long. But Louis seized the pen, and with a movement so rapid that his hand shook, he affixed his signature at the bottom of the two papers presented by Colbert. Then looking the latter in the face, Monsieur Colbert, said he, when you speak to me on business, exclude more frequently the word difficulty from your reasonings and opinions. As to the word impossibility, never pronounce it. Colbert bowed, much humiliated at having to undergo such a lesson before the musketeer. He was about to go out, but, jealous to repair his check, I forgot to announce to your majesty, said he, that the confiscations amount to the sum of 5 millions of livres. That's pretty well, thought D'Artagnan. Which makes in my coffers, said the king. 18 millions of livres, sire, replied Colbert, bowing. Mordioux, growled D'Artagnan, that's glorious. Monsieur Colbert, added the king, you will, if you please, go through the gallery where M. Léon is waiting, and will tell him to bring hither what he has drawn up, by my order. Directly, sire, if your majesty wants me no more this evening? No, monsieur, good night. And Colbert went out. Now let us return to our affair, M. D'Artagnan, said the king as if nothing had happened. You see that, with respect to money, there is already a notable change. Something to the tune of from 0 to 18 millions, replied the musketeer gaily. That was what your majesty wanted the day King Charles II came to Blois. The two states would not have been embroiled today, for I must say, that there also I see another stumbling block. Well, in the first place, replied Louis, you are unjust, monsieur, for if Providence had made me able to give my brother the million that day, you would not have quitted my service, and consequently, you would not have made your fortune as you told me just now you have done. But in addition to this, I have had another piece of good fortune, and my difference with Great Britain need not alarm you. A valet de chamber interrupted the king by announcing M. Léon. Come in, monsieur, said the king. You are punctual, that is like a good servant. Let us see your letter to my brother Charles II. D'Artagnan pricked up his ears. A moment, monsieur, said Louis carelessly to the Gascon. I must expedite to London my consent to the marriage of my brother M. le Duc d'Anjou, with the Princess Henrietta Stuart. He is knocking me about, it seems, murmured D'Artagnan, whilst the king signed the letter and dismissed M. de Lyon. But ma foi, the more he knocks me about in this manner, the better I like it. The king followed M. de Lyon with his eyes, till the door was closed behind him. He even made 3 steps as if he would follow the minister, but after these 3 steps, stopping, passing, and coming back to the Musketeer, "Now, monsieur," said he, "let us hasten to terminate our affair. You told me the other day at Blois that you were not rich. But I am now, sire." "Yes, but that does not concern me. You have your own money, not mine. That does not enter into my account. I do not well understand what your majesty means." "Then, instead of leaving you to draw out words, speak spontaneously. Should you be satisfied with 20,000 livres a year as a fixed income?" "But, sire," said D'Artagnan, opening his eyes to the utmost, "would you be satisfied with 4 horses furnished and kept, and with a supplement of funds such as you might require, according to occasions and needs, or would you prefer a fixed sum which would be, for example, 40,000 livres? Answer." "Sire, your majesty." "Yes, you are surprised. That is natural, and I expected it. Answer me, come. Or I shall think you have no longer that rapidity of judgment I have so much admired in you." "It is certain, sire, that 20,000 livres a year make a handsome sum, but—" "No buts. Yes or no, is it an honorable indemnity?" "Oh, very certainly. You will be satisfied with it? That is well. It will be better to reckon the extra expenses separately. You can arrange that with Colbert. Now let us pass to something more important." "But, sire, I told your majesty that you wanted rest. I know you did, only I replied that I would not allow it. I am master, I suppose?" "Yes, sire." "That is well. You were formerly in the way of becoming captain of the Musketeers." "Yes, sire." "Well, here is your commission signed. I place it in this drawer. The day on which you return from a certain expedition which I have to confide to you, on that day you may yourself take the commission from the drawer." D'Artagnan still hesitated and hung down his head. "Come, monsieur," said the king, "one would believe to look at you, that you did not know that at the court of the most Christian king, the captain general of the Musketeers takes precedence of the maréchals of France." "Sire, I know he does." "Then, am I to think you do put no faith in my word?" "Oh, sire, never, never dream of such a thing. I have wished to prove to you that you, so good a servant, had lost a good master. Am I anything like the master that will suit you?" "I begin to think you are, sire." "Then, monsieur, you will resume your functions. Your company is quite disorganized since your departure, and the men go about drinking and rioting in the cabarets, where they fight, in spite of my edicts and those of my father. You will reorganize the service as soon as possible." "Yes, sire." "You will not again quit my person." "Very well, sire." "You will march with me to the army, you will encamp round my tent." "Then, sire," said D'Artagnan, "if it is only to impose upon me a service like that, your majesty need not give me 20,000 livres a year. I shall not earn them. I desire that you shall keep open house. I desire that you should keep a liberal table. I desire that my captain of Musketeers should be a personage." "And I," said D'Artagnan bluntly, "I do not like easily found money, I like money won. Your majesty gives me an idle trade, which the first comber would perform for 4,000 livres." Louis XIV began to laugh. "You are a true Gascon, Monsieur D'Artagnan. You will draw my heart's secret from me." "Bah! Has your majesty a secret, then?" "Yes, monsieur." "Well, then I accept the 20,000 livres, for I will keep that secret, and discretion is above all price in these times. Will your majesty speak now?" "Boot yourself, Monsieur D'Artagnan, and to horse." "Directly, sire." "Within 2 days." "That is well, sire, for I have my affairs to settle before I set out, particularly if it is likely there should be any blows stirring." "That may happen. We can receive them." "But, sire, you have addressed yourself to avarice, to ambition. You have addressed yourself to the heart of M. D'Artagnan, but you have forgotten one thing." "What is that?" "You have said nothing to his vanity. When shall I be a knight of the king's orders?" "Does that interest you?" "Why, yes, sire. My friend Athos is quite covered with orders, and that dazzles me." "You shall be a knight of my order a month after you have taken your commission of captain." "Ah," said the officer thoughtfully, "after the expedition." "Precisely. Where is your majesty going to send me?" Are you acquainted with Bretagne? No, sire. Have you any friends there? In Bretagne? No, ma foi. So much the better. Do you know anything about fortifications? I believe I do, sire, said D'Artagnan, smiling. That is to say, you can readily distinguish a fortress from a simple fortification, such as is allowed to chatelains or vassals? I distinguish a fort from a rampart as I distinguish a cuirass from a raised pie crust, sire. Is that sufficient? Yes, monsieur. You will set out then. For Bretagne? Yes. Alone? Absolutely alone. That is to say, you must not even take a lackey with you. May I ask your majesty for what reason? Because, monsieur, it will be necessary to disguise yourself sometimes, as the servant of a good family. Your face is very well known in France, M. D'Artagnan. And then, sire? And then you will travel slowly through Bretagne, and will examine the fortifications of that country. The coasts? Yes, and the isles, commencing by Belle-en-Mer. Ah, which belongs to M. Fouquet, said D'Artagnan in a serious tone, raising his intelligent eye to Louis XIV. I fancy you are right, monsieur, and that Belle does belong to M. Fouquet in fact. Then your majesty wishes me to ascertain if Belle-Isle is a strong place? Yes. If the fortifications of it are new or old? Precisely. And if the vassals of M. Fouquet are sufficiently numerous to form a garrison? That is what I want to know. You have placed your finger on the question. And if they are not fortifying, sire? You will travel about Bretagne, listening and judging. Then I am a king's spy? Said D'Artagnan, bluntly twisting his mustache. No, monsieur. Your pardon, sire, I spy on your majesty's account. You start on a voyage of discovery, monsieur. Would you march at the head of your musketeers, with your sword in your hand, to observe any spot whatever or an enemy's position? At this word D'Artagnan started. Do you, continued the king, imagine yourself to be a spy? No, no, said D'Artagnan, but pensively, the thing changes its face when one observes an enemy, one is but a soldier. And if they are fortifying Belle-Isle, added he quickly, you will take an exact plan of the fortifications. Will they permit me to enter? That does not concern me, that is your affair. Did you not understand that I reserved for you a supplement of 20,000 livres per annum, if you wished it? Yes, sire, but if they are not fortifying? You will return quietly without fatiguing your horse. Sire, I am ready. You will begin tomorrow by going to Monsieur le Surintendant's to take the first quarter of the pension I give you. Do you know him, Fouquet? Very little, sire, but I beg your majesty to observe that I don't think it immediately necessary that I should know him. Your pardon, monsieur, for he will refuse you the money I wish you to take, and it is that refusal I look for. Ah, said D'Artagnan. Then, sire? The money being refused, you will go and seek it at M. Colbert's. Apropos, have you a good horse? An excellent one, sire. How much did it cost you? 150 pistoles. I will buy it of you. Here is a note for 200 pistoles. But I want a horse for my journey, sire. Well, and you take mine from me. Not at all. On the contrary, I give it you. Only as it is now mine and not yours, I am sure you will not spare it. Your majesty is in a hurry, then? A great hurry. Then what compels me to wait 2 days? Reasons known to myself. That's a different affair. The horse may make up the 2 days in the 8 he has to travel, and then there is the post. No, the post compromises, Monsieur D'Artagnan. Begone and do not forget you are my servant. Sire, it is not my duty to forget it. At what hour tomorrow shall I take my leave of your majesty? Whence do you lodge? I must henceforward lodge at the Louvre. That must not be now. Keep your lodgings in the city, I will pay for them. As to your departure, it must take place at night. You must set out without being seen by anyone, or if you are seen, it must not be known that you belong to me. Keep your mouth shut, monsieur. Your majesty spoils all you have said by that single word. I asked where you lodged, for I cannot always send to M. le Comte de la Fere to seek you. I lodge with M. Planchet, a grocer, Rue de Lombards at the sign of the Pilon d'Or. Go out but little, show yourself less, and await my orders. And yet, sire, I must go for the money. That is true, but when going to the superintendent's where so many people are constantly going, you must mingle with the crowd. I want the notes, sire, for the money. Here they are. The king signed them, and D'Artagnan looked on, to assure himself of their regularity. Adieu. Monsieur D'Artagnan, added the king, I think you have perfectly understood me. I understand that your majesty sends me to Belle-en-Mer, that is all. To learn. To learn how M. Fouquet's works are going on, that is all. Very well, I admit you may be taken. And I do not admit it, replied the Gascon boldly. I admit you may be killed, continued the king. That is not probable, sire. In the first case you must not speak, in the second there must be no papers found upon you. D'Artagnan shrugged his shoulders without ceremony and took leave of the king, saying to himself, The English shower continues, let us remain under the spout. Chapter 54. The Houses of M. Fouquet. Whilst D'Artagnan was returning to Planchet's house, his head aching and bewildered with all that had happened to him, there was passing a scene of quite a different character, and which, nevertheless, is not foreign to the conversation our Musketeer had just had with the king. Only this scene took place out of Paris in a house possessed by the Superintendent Fouquet in the village of Saint-Mandé. The minister had just arrived at this country house, followed by his principal clerk, who carried an enormous portfolio full of papers to be examined, and others waiting for signature. As it might be about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the masters had dined. Supper was being prepared for 20 subaltern guests. The superintendent did not stop. On alighting from his carriage, he at the same bound sprang through the doorway, traversed the apartments and gained his cabinet, where he declared he would shut himself up to work, commanding that he should not be disturbed for anything but an order from the king. As soon as this order was given, Fouquet shut himself up, and 2 footmen were placed as sentinels at his door. Then Fouquet pushed a bolt which displaced a panel that walled up the entrance, and prevented everything that passed in this apartment from being either seen or heard. But, against all probability, it was only for the sake of shutting himself up that Fouquet shut himself up thus, for he went straight to a bureau, seated himself at it, opened the portfolio, and began to make a choice amongst the enormous mass of papers it contained. It was not more than 10 minutes after he had entered, and taken all the precautions we have described, when the repeated noise of several slight equal knocks struck his ear, and appeared to fix his utmost attention. Fouquet raised his head, turned his ear, and listened. The strokes continued. Then the worker arose with a slight movement of impatience and walked straight up to a glass behind which the blows were struck by a hand, or by some invisible mechanism. It was a large glass let into a panel. 3 other glasses, exactly similar to it, completed the symmetry of the apartment. Nothing distinguished that one from the others. Without doubt, these reiterated knocks were a signal, for at the moment Fouquet approached the glass listening, the same noise was renewed and in the same measure. Oh, murmured the intendant with surprise, who is yonder? I did not expect anybody today. And without doubt, to respond to the signal, he pulled out a gilded nail near the glass and shook it thrice. Then returning to his place and seating himself again, Ma foi, let them wait, said he. And plunging again into the ocean of papers unrolled before him, he appeared to think of nothing now but work. In fact, with incredible rapidity and marvelous lucidity, Fouquet deciphered the largest papers and most complicated writings, correcting them, annotating them with a pen moved as if by a fever, and the work melting under his hands, signatures, figures, references, became multiplied as if 10 clerks, that is to say, 100 fingers and 10 brains had performed the duties, instead of the 5 fingers and single brain of this man. From time to time only Fouquet, absorbed by his work, raised his head to cast a furtive glance upon a clock placed before him. The reason of this was, Fouquet set himself a task, and when this task was once set, in 1 hour's work he, by himself, did what another would not have accomplished in a day, always certain, consequently, provided he was not disturbed, of arriving at the close in the time his devouring activity had fixed. But in the midst of his ardent labor, the soft strokes upon the little bell placed behind the glass sounded again, hasty, and consequently more urgent. The lady appears to be impatient, said Fouquet. Humph, come. That must be the Comtesse. But no, the Comtesse is gone to Rambouillet for 3 days. The Presidente then? No, the Presidente would not assume such grand airs. She would ring very humbly, then she would wait my good pleasure. The greatest certainty is, that I do not know who it can be, but that I know who it cannot be. And since it is not you, Marquise, since it cannot be you, deuce take the rest. And he went on with his work in spite of the reiterated appeals of the bell. At the end of a quarter of an hour, however, impatience prevailed over Fouquet in his turn. He might be said to consume rather than to complete the rest of his work. He thrust his papers into his portfolio, and giving a glance at the mirror, whilst the taps continued faster than ever, Oh, said he, whence comes all this racket? What has happened, and who can the Ariadne be who expects me so impatiently? Let us see. He then applied the tip of his finger to the nail parallel to the one he had drawn. Immediately the glass moved like a folding door and discovered a secret closet, rather deep, into which the superintendent disappeared as if going into a vast box. When there, he touched another spring which opened not a board but a block of the wall, and he went out by that opening, leaving the door to shut of itself. Then Fouquet descended about a score of steps which sank, winding, underground, and came to a long subterranean passage, lighted by imperceptible loopholes. The walls of this vault were covered with slabs or tiles, and the floor with carpeting. This passage was under the street itself, which separated Fouquet's house from the park of Vincennes. At the end of the passage ascended a winding staircase parallel with that by which Fouquet had entered. He mounted these other stairs, entered by means of a spring placed in a closet similar to that in his cabinet, and from this closet an untenanted chamber furnished with the utmost elegance. As soon as he entered, he examined carefully whether the glass closed without leaving any trace, and doubtless satisfied with his observation, he opened by means of a small gold key the triple fastenings of a door in front of him. This time the door opened upon a handsome cabinet, sumptuously furnished, in which was seated upon cushions a lady of surpassing beauty, who at the sound of the lock sprang towards Fouquet. "Ah, good heavens!" cried the latter, starting back with astonishment. "Madame la Marquise de Belliere, you here?" "Yes," murmured la Marquise. "Yes, it is I, monsieur." "Marquise." "Dear Marquise," added Fouquet, ready to prostrate himself. "Ah, my God, how did you come here? And I to keep you waiting." "A long time, monsieur, yes, a very long time." "I am happy in thinking this waiting has appeared long to you, Marquise." "Oh, an eternity, monsieur. Oh, I rang more than 20 times. Did you not hear me? Marquise, you are pale, you tremble. Did you not hear then that you were summoned?" "Oh yes, I heard plainly enough, madam, but I could not come. After your rigors and your refusals, how could I dream it was you? If I could have had any suspicion of the happiness that awaited me, believe me, madam, I would have quitted everything to fall at your feet as I do at this moment." "Are we quite alone, monsieur?" asked the marquise, looking round the room. "Oh yes, madam, I can assure you of that." "Really?" said the marquise in a melancholy tone. "You sigh," said Fouquet. "What mysteries? What precautions?" said the marquise with a slight bitterness of expression. "And how evident it is that you fear the least suspicion of your amours to escape. Would you prefer their being made public?" "Oh no, you act like a delicate man," said the marquise, smiling. "Come, dear marquise, punish me not with reproaches, I implore you." "Reproaches? Have I a right to make you any?" "No, unfortunately no, but tell me, you who during a year I have loved without return or hope." "You are mistaken, without hope it is true, but not without return." "What? For me of my love? There is but one proof, and that proof I still want. I am here to bring it, monsieur." Fouquet wished to clasp her in his arms, but she disengaged herself with a gesture. "You persist in deceiving yourself, monsieur, and will never accept of me the only thing I am willing to give you, devotion." "Ah, then you do not love me? Devotion is but a virtue, love is a passion. Listen to me, I implore you. I should not have come hither without a serious motive. You are well assured of that, are you not? The motive is of very little consequence, so that you are but here, so that I see you, so that I speak to you. You are right. The principal thing is that I am here without anyone having seen me, and that I can speak to you." Fouquet sank on his knees before her. "Speak. Speak, madam," said he, "I listen to you." The marquise looked at Fouquet on his knees at her feet, and there was in the looks of the woman a strange mixture of love and melancholy. "Oh," at length murmured she, "would that I were she who has the right of seeing you every minute, of speaking to you every instant. Would that I were she who might watch over you, she who would have no need of mysterious springs to summon and cause to appear, like a sylph, the man she loves, to look at him for an hour, and then see him disappear in the darkness of a mystery, still more strange at his going out than at his coming in. That would be to live like a happy woman." "Do you happen, marquise," said Fouquet, smiling, "to be speaking of my wife?" "Yes, certainly of her I spoke." "Well, you need not envy her lot, marquise. Of all the women with whom I have had any relations, Madame Fouquet is the one I see the least of, and who has the least intercourse with me. At least, monsieur, she is not reduced to place as I have done, her hand upon the ornament of a glass to call you to her. At least you do not reply to her by the mysterious, alarming sound of a bell, the spring of which comes from I don't know where. At least you have not forbidden her to endeavor to discover the secret of these communications under pain of breaking off forever your connections with her. as you have forbidden all who come here before me, and who will come after me. Dear Marquise, how unjust you are, and how little do you know what you are doing in thus exclaiming against mystery. It is with mystery alone we can love without trouble. It is with love without trouble alone that we can be happy. But let us return to ourselves, to that devotion of which you were speaking, or rather let me labor under a pleasing delusion, and believe this devotion is love. Just now, repeated the Marquise, passing over her eyes a hand that might have been a model for the graceful contours of antiquity, just now I was prepared to speak, my ideas were clear and bold, now I am quite confused, quite troubled, I fear I bring you bad news. If it is to that bad news I owe your presence, Marquise, welcome be even that bad news. Or rather, Marquise, since you allow that I am not quite indifferent to you, let me hear nothing of the bad news, but speak of yourself. No, no, on the contrary, demand it of me, require me to tell it to you instantly, and not to allow myself to be turned aside by any feeling whatever. Fouquet, my friend, it is of immense importance. You astonish me, Marquise, I will even say you almost frighten me. You so serious, so collected, you who know the world we live in so well. Is it then important? Oh, very important. In the first place, how did you come here? You shall know that presently, but first to something of more consequence. Speak, Marquise, speak. I implore you, have pity on my impatience. Do you know that Colbert is made intendant of the finances? Bah! Colbert, little Colbert. Yes, Colbert, little Colbert. Mazarin's factotum? The same. Well, what do you see so terrific in that, dear Marquise? Little Colbert is intendant. That is astonishing, I confess, but is not terrible. Do you think the king has given, without pressing motive, such a place to one you call a little quister? In the first place, is it positively true that the king has given it to him? It is so said. Aye, but who says so? Everybody. Everybody, that's nobody. Mention someone likely to be well informed who says so. Madame Vanel. Ah, now you begin to frighten me in earnest, said Fouquet, laughing. If anyone is well informed or ought to be well informed, it is the person you name. Do not speak ill of poor Marguerite, Monsieur Fouquet, for she still loves you. Bah! Indeed? That is scarcely credible. I thought little Colbert, as you said just now, had passed over that love, and left the impression upon it of a spot of ink or a stain of grease. Fouquet, Fouquet, is this the way you always treat the poor creatures you desert? Why, you surely are not going to undertake the defense of Madame Vanel? Yes, I will undertake it, for I repeat, she loves you still, and the proof is she saves you. But your interposition, Marquise, that is very cunning on her part. No angel could be more agreeable to me, or could lead me more certainly to salvation. But let me ask you, do you know Marguerite? She was my convent friend. And you say that she has informed you that Monsieur Colbert was named intendant? Yes, she did. Well, enlighten me, Marquise. Granted Monsieur Colbert is intendant, so be it. In what can an intendant, that is to say my subordinate, my clerk, give me umbrage or injure me, even if he is Monsieur Colbert? You do not reflect, Monsieur, apparently, replied the Marquise. Upon what? This, that Monsieur Colbert hates you. Hates me? Cried Fouquet. Good heavens! Marquise, whence do you come? Where can you live? Hates me. Why, all the world hates me, he of course as others do. He more than others. More than others, let him. He is ambitious. Who is not, Marquise? Yes, but with him ambition has no bounds. I am quite aware of that, since he made it a point to succeed me with Madame Vanel. And obtained his end, look at that. Do you mean to say he has the presumption to pass from intendant to superintendent? Have you not yourself already had the same fear? Oh, said Fouquet, to succeed with Madame Vanel is one thing, to succeed me with the king is another. France is not to be purchased so easily as the wife of a maitre de camps. Monsieur, everything is to be bought, if not by gold, by intrigue. Nobody knows to the contrary better than you, madame, you to whom I have offered millions. Instead of millions, Fouquet, you should have offered me a true, only and boundless love. I might have accepted that. So you see, still, everything is to be bought, if not in one way by another. So, Colbert, in your opinion, is in a fair way of bargaining for my place of superintendent. Make yourself easy on that head, my dear Marquise. He is not yet rich enough to purchase it. But if he should rob you of it? That is another thing. Unfortunately, before he can reach me, that is to say, the body of the place, he must destroy, must make a breach in the advanced works, and I am devilishly well fortified, Marquise. What you call your advanced works are your creatures, are they not, your friends? Exactly so. And is M. Dimerus one of your creatures? Yes, he is. Is M. Lyodot one of your friends? Certainly. M. de Vannon? De Vannon. They may do what they like with him, but they must not touch the others. Well, if you are anxious they should not touch M. Dimerus and Lyodot, it is time to look about you. Who threatens them? Will you listen to me now? Attentively, Marquise. Without interrupting me? Speak. Well, this morning Marguerite sent for me. And what did she want with you? I dare not see M. Fouquet myself, said she. Bah! Why should she think I would reproach her? Poor woman, she vastly deceives herself. See him yourself, said she, and tell him to beware of M. Colbert. What? She warned me to beware of her lover? I have told you she still loves you. Go on, Marquise. M. Colbert, she added, came to me 2 hours ago to inform me he was appointed intendant. I have already told you, Marquise, that M. Colbert would only be the more in my power for that. Yes, but that is not all. Marguerite is intimate, as you know, with Madame Dimerus and Madame Lyodot. I know it. Well, M. Colbert put many questions to her, relative to the fortunes of these two gentlemen, and as to the devotion they had for you. Oh, as to those two, I can answer for them. They must be killed before they will cease to be mine. Then, as Madame Vanel was obliged to quit M. Colbert for an instant to receive a visitor, and as M. Colbert is industrious, scarcely was the new intendant left alone, before he took a pencil from his pocket, and there was paper on the table, began to make notes. Notes concerning Dimerus and Lyodot? Exactly. I should like to know what those notes were about. And that is just what I have brought you. Madame Vanel has taken Colbert's notes and sent them to me? No, but by a chance which resembles a miracle, she has a duplicate of those notes. How could she get that? Listen, I told you that Colbert found paper on the table. Yes. That he took a pencil from his pocket. Yes. And wrote upon that paper. Yes. Well, this pencil was a lead pencil, consequently hard, so it marked in black upon the first sheet, and in white upon the second. Go on. Colbert, when tearing off the first sheet, took no notice of the second. Well, on the second was to be read what had been written on the first. Madame Vanel read it and sent for me. Yes. Then, when she was assured I was your devoted friend, she gave me the paper and told me the secret of this house. And this paper? Said Fouquet in some degree of agitation. Here it is, monsieur, read it, said the Marquise. Fouquet read. Names of the farmers of revenue to be condemned by the Chamber of Justice. Dimerus, friend of M.F. Lyodot, friend of M.F. de Vannon, indif. Dimerus and Lyodot, cried Fouquet, reading the paper eagerly again. Friends of M.F., pointed the Marquise with her finger. But what is the meaning of these words? To be condemned by the Chamber of Justice? Dame, said the Marquise, that is clear enough, I think. Besides, that is not all. Read on, and Fouquet continued, the two first to death, the third to be dismissed, with M. de Hautmont and de la Valette, who will only have their property confiscated. Great God, cried Fouquet, to death, Lyodot and Dimerus. But even if the Chamber of Justice should condemn them to death, the king will never ratify their condemnation, and they cannot be executed without the king's signature. The king has made M. Colbert intendant. Oh, cried Fouquet as if he caught a glimpse of the abyss that yawned beneath his feet. Impossible. But who passed a pencil over the marks made by Colbert? I did. I was afraid the first would be effaced. Oh, I will know all. You will know nothing, monsieur. You despise your enemy too much for that. Pardon me, my dear Marquise, excuse me, yes'm. Colbert is my enemy, I believe him to be so, yes'm. Colbert is a man to be dreaded, I admit. But I have time, and as you are here, as you have assured me of your devotion, as you have allowed me to hope for your love, as we are alone. I came here to save you, Monsieur Fouquet, and not to ruin myself, said the Marquise, rising, therefore beware. Marquise, in truth you terrify yourself too much, at least, unless this terror is but a pretext. He is very deep, this M. Colbert, beware. Fouquet in his turn, drew himself up. And I? asked he. And you have only a noble heart. Beware. So, I have done what was right, my friend, at the risk of my reputation. Adieu. Not adieu, au revoir. Perhaps, said the Marquise, giving her hand to Fouquet to kiss, and walking towards the door with so firm a step, that he did not dare to bar her passage. As to Fouquet, He retook, with his head hanging down and a fixed cloud on his brow, the path of the subterranean passage along which ran the metal wires that communicated from one house to the other, transmitting, through two glasses, the wishes and signals of hidden correspondence. Chapter 55. The Abbé Fouquet. Fouquet hastened back to his apartment by the subterranean passage, and immediately closed the mirror with the spring. He was scarcely in his well-known voice crying, "Open the door, monseigneur, I entreat you, open the door." Fouquet quickly restored a little order to everything that might have revealed either his absence or his agitation. He spread his papers over the desk, took up a pen, and to gain time said through the closed door, "Who is there?" "What, monseigneur, do you not know me?" replied the voice. "Yes, yes," said Fouquet to himself, "yes, my friend, I know you well enough." And then aloud, "Is it not Gourville?" "Why, yes, monseigneur." Fouquet arose, cast a look at one of his glasses, went to the door, pushed back the bolt, and Gourville entered. "Ah, monseigneur! Monseigneur!" cried he, "what cruelty!" "In what?" "I have been a quarter of an hour imploring you to open the door, and you would not even answer me. Once and for all, you know that I will not be disturbed when I am busy. Now, although I might make you an exception, Gourville, I insist upon my orders being respected by others. Monseigneur, at this moment, orders, doors, bolts, locks, and walls I could have broken, forced, and overthrown." "Ah, it relates to some great event, then?" asked Fouquet. "Oh, I assure you it does, monseigneur," replied Gourville. "And what is this event?" said Fouquet, a little troubled by the evident agitation of his most intimate confidant. "There is a secret chamber of justice instituted, monseigneur." "I know there is, but do the members meet, Gourville?" "They not only meet, but they have passed a sentence, monseigneur." "A sentence?" said the superintendent, with a shudder and pallor he could not conceal. "A sentence, and on whom?" "Two of your best friends." "Lyodot and Diomeris, do you mean? But what sort of a sentence?" "Sentence of death." "Passed?" "You must be mistaken, Gourville, that is impossible. Here is a copy of the sentence which the king is to sign today, if he has not already signed it." Fouquet seized the paper eagerly, read it, and returned it to Gourville. "The king will never sign that," said he. Gourville shook his head. "Monseigneur M. Colbert is a bold counselor, do not be too confident." "Monsieur Colbert again," cried Fouquet. "How is it that that name rises upon all occasions to torment my ears, during the last 2 or 3 days? You make so trifling a subject of too much importance, Gourville. Let him, Colbert, appear, I will face him. Let him raise his head, I will crush him. But you understand, there must be an outline upon which my look may fall, there must be a surface upon which my feet may be placed. Patience, monseigneur, for you do not know what Colbert is, study him quickly. It is with this dark financier as it is with meteors, which the eye never sees completely before their disastrous invasion. When we feel them we are dead." "Oh, Gourville, this is going too far," replied Fouquet, smiling. "Allow me, my friend, not to be so easily frightened. M. Colbert a meteor. Corbleu, we confront the meteor. Let us see acts and not words. What has he done?" "He has ordered 2 gibbets of the executioner of Paris," answered Gourville. Fouquet raised his head, and a flash gleamed from his eyes. "Are you sure of what you say?" cried he. "Here is the proof, monseigneur." And Gourville held out to the superintendent a note communicated by a certain secretary of the Hôtel de Ville, who was one of Fouquet's creatures. "Yes, that is true," murmured the minister. "The scaffold may be prepared, but the king has not signed. Gourville, the king will not sign." "I shall soon know," said Gourville. "How?" "If the king has signed, the gibbets will be sent this evening to the Hôtel de Ville, in order to be got up and ready by tomorrow morning." "Oh, no, no," cried the superintendent once again. "You are all deceived, and deceive me in my turn. Lyodot came to see me only the day before yesterday. Only 3 days ago I received a present of some Syracuse wine from poor Diomeris." "What does that prove?" replied Gourville. "Except that the chamber of justice has been secretly assembled, has deliberated in the absence of the accused, and that the whole proceeding was complete when they were arrested." "What? Are they then arrested?" "No doubt they are." "But where, when, and how have they been arrested?" "Lyodot yesterday at daybreak, Diomeris the day before yesterday in the evening as he was returning from the house of his mistress. Their disappearances had disturbed nobody, but at length M. Colbert all at once raised the mask and caused the affair to be published. It is being cried by sound of trumpet at this moment in Paris, and in truth, monseigneur, there is scarcely anybody but yourself ignorant of the event." Fouquet began to walk about in his chamber with an uneasiness that became more and more serious. "What do you decide upon, monseigneur?" said Gourville. "If it were really as easy as you say, I would go to the king," cried Fouquet. "But as I go to the Louvre, I will pass by the Hôtel de Ville. We shall see if the sentence is signed." "Incredulity. Thou art the pest of all great minds," said Gourville, shrugging his shoulders. Gourville. "Yes," continued he, "and incredulity. Thou ruinest as contagion destroys the most robust health, that is to say, in an instant." "Let us go," cried Fouquet. "Desire the door to be opened, Gourville." "Be cautious," said the latter, "the Abbé Fouquet is there." "Ah, my brother?" replied Fouquet in a tone of annoyance. "He is there, is he? He knows all the ill news, then, and is rejoiced to bring it to me as usual. The devil! If my brother is there, my affairs are bad, Gourville. Why did you not tell me that sooner? I should have been the more readily convinced." "Monseigneur calumniates him," said Gourville, laughing. "If he is come, it is not with a bad intention." "What, do you excuse him?" cried Fouquet. "A fellow without a heart, without ideas, a devourer of wealth. He knows you are rich, and would ruin me. No, but he would have your purse. That is all. Enough, enough. 100,000 crowns per month during 2 years. Corbeau. It is I that pay Gourville, and I know my figures." Gourville laughed in a silent, sly manner. "Yes, yes, you mean to say it is the king pays," said the superintendent. "Ah, Gourville, that is a vile joke. This is not the place. Monseigneur, do not be angry." "Well then, send away the Abbé Fouquet. I have not a sou." Gourville made a step towards the door. "He has been a month without seeing me," continued Fouquet. "Why could he not be 2 months?" "Because he repents of living in bad company," said Gourville, "and prefers you to all his bandits." "Thanks for the preference. You make a strange advocate, Gourville, today, the advocate of the Abbé Fouquet. But everything and every man has a good side, their useful side, monseigneur. The bandits whom the Abbé keeps in pay and drink have their useful side, have they? Prove that if you please. Let the circumstance arise, monseigneur, and you will be very glad to have these bandits under your hand." "You advise me then to be reconciled to the Abbé?" said Fouquet ironically. "I advise you, monseigneur, not to quarrel with 100 or 120 loose fellows, who, by putting their rapiers end to end, would form a cordon of steel capable of surrounding 3,000 men." Fouquet darted a searching glance at Gourville, and passing before him, "That is all very well, let him l'Abbé Fouquet be introduced," said he to the footman. "You are right, Gourville." 2 minutes after, the Abbé Fouquet appeared in the doorway with profound reverence. He was a man of from 40 to 45 years of age, half churchman, half soldier, a spadassin grafted upon an abbé. Upon seeing that he had not a sword by his side, you might be sure he had pistols. Fouquet saluted him more as elder brother than as a minister. "What can I do to serve you, Monsieur l'Abbé?" said he. "Oh, how coldly you speak to me, brother." "I speak like a man who is in a hurry, monsieur." The Abbé looked maliciously at Gourville and anxiously at Fouquet and said, "I have 300 pistoles to pay to M. de Bragelonne this evening. A play debt, a sacred debt." "What next?" said Fouquet bravely, for he comprehended that the Abbé Fouquet would not have disturbed him for such a want. "1,000 to my butcher, who will supply no more meat." "Next?" 1,200 to my tailor," continued the Abbé. "The fellow has made me take back 7 suits of my people's, which compromises my liveries, and my mistress talks of replacing me by a farmer of the revenue, which would be a humiliation for the church." "What else?" said Fouquet. "You will please to remark," said the Abbé humbly, "that I have asked nothing for myself." "That is delicate, monsieur," replied Fouquet, "so as you see I wait. And I ask nothing, oh, no, it is not for want of need though, I assure you." The minister reflected for a minute. 1,200 pistoles to the tailor, that seems a great deal for clothes, said he. "I maintain 100 men," said the Abbé proudly. "That is a charge, I believe." "Why 100 men?" said Fouquet. "Are you a Richelieu or a Mazarin to require 100 men as a guard? What use do you make of these men? Speak." "And do you ask me that?" cried the Abbé Fouquet. "Ah, how can you put such a question? Why I maintain 100 men? Ah, why yes, I do put that question to you. What have you to do with 100 men? Answer." "Ingrate," continued the Abbé more and more affected. "Explain yourself." "Why, monsieur the superintendent, I only want 1 valet de chambre for my part, and even if I were alone, could help myself very well. But you who have so many enemies, 100 men are not enough for me to defend you with." 100 men? You ought to have 10,000. I maintain, then, these men in order that in public places and assemblies, no voice may be raised against you, and without them, monsieur, you would be loaded with imprecations, you would be torn to pieces, you would not last a week. No, not a week, do you understand? I did not know you were my champion to such an extent, Monsieur l'Abbé. You doubt it? Cried the Abbé. Listen then to what happened no longer ago than yesterday in the Rue de la Hochette. A man was cheapening a fowl. Well, how could that injure me, Abbé? This way. The fowl was not fat. The purchaser refused to give 18 sous for it, saying that he could not afford 18 sous for the skin of a fowl from which M. Fouquet had sucked all the fat. Go on. The joke caused a deal of laughter, continued the Abbé, laughter at your expense, death to the devils. And the canaille were delighted. The joker added, give me a fowl fed by M. Colbert if you like, and I will pay all you ask. And immediately there was a clapping of hands. A frightful scandal. You understand, a scandal which forces a brother to hide his face. Fouquet colored. And you veiled it? Said the superintendent. No, for so it happened I had one of my men in the crowd, a new recruit from the provinces, one M. Meneville, whom I like very much. He made his way through the press, saying to the joker, Mille barbes. Monsieur the false joker, here's a thrust for Colbert. And one for Fouquet, replied the joker. Upon which they drew in front of the cook's shop, with a hedge of the curious round them, and 500 as curious at the windows. Well, said Fouquet. Well, monsieur, my Meneville spitted the joker, to the great astonishment of the spectators, and said to the cook, take this goose, my friend, for it is fatter than your fowl. That is the way, monsieur, ended the Abbé triumphantly, in which I spend my revenues. I maintain the honor of the family, monsieur. Fouquet hung his head. And I have 100 as good as he, continued the Abbé. Very well, said Fouquet, give the account to Gourville and remain here this evening. Shall we have supper? Yes, there will be supper. But the chest is closed. Gourville will open it for you. Leave us, Monsieur l'Abbé, leave us. Then we are friends? Said the Abbé with a bow. Oh yes, friends. Come, Gourville. Are you going out? You will not stay to supper then? I shall be back in an hour. Rest easy, Abbé. Then aside to Gourville, let them put to my English horses, said he, and direct the coachman to stop at the Hôtel de Ville de Paris. Chapter 56. M. de La Fontaine's wine. Carriages were already bringing the guests of Fouquet to Saint-Mandé. Already the whole house was getting warm with the preparations for supper, when the superintendent launched his fleet horses upon the roads to Paris, and going by the quays, in order to meet fewer people on the way, soon reached the Hôtel de Ville. It wanted 7:15. Fouquet alighted at the corner of the Rue de Longpont, and on foot, directed his course towards the Place de Grève, accompanied by Gourville. At the turning of the place they saw a man dressed in black and violet, of dignified mien, who was preparing to stop at Vincennes. He had before him a large hamper filled with bottles, which he had just purchased at the cabaret with the sign of L'Image de Notre Dame. Ah, but that is Vatel. My maître d'hôtel, said Fouquet to Gourville. Yes, monseigneur, replied the latter. What can he have been doing at the sign of L'Image de Notre Dame? Buying wine, no doubt. What? Buy wine for me at a cabaret? Said Fouquet. My cellar, then, must be in a miserable condition, and he advanced towards the maître d'hôtel, who was arranging his bottles in the carriage with the most minute care. Hola, Vatel, said he in the voice of a master. Take care, monseigneur, said Gourville, you will be recognized. Very well. Of what consequence? Vatel. The man dressed in black and violet turned round. He had a good and mild countenance without expression, a mathematician minus the pride. A certain fire sparkled in the eyes of this personage, a rather sly smile played round his lips, but the observer might soon have remarked that this fire and this smile applied to nothing, enlightened nothing. Vatel laughed like an absent man and amused himself like a child. At the sound of his master's voice he turned round, exclaiming, Oh, monseigneur. Yes, it is I. What the devil are you doing here, Vatel? Why, you are buying wine at a cabaret in the Place de Grève. But, monseigneur, said Vatel, quietly after having darted a hostile glance at Gourville, why am I interfered with here? Is my cellar kept in bad order? No, certes, Vatel, no, but what? Replied Vatel. Gourville touched Fouquet's elbow. Don't be angry, Vatel. I thought my cellar, your cellar, sufficiently well stocked for us to be able to dispense with recourse to the cellar of L'Image de Notre Dame. Eh, monsieur, said Vattel, shrinking from Monseigneur to Monsieur with a degree of disdain. Your cellar is so well stocked that when certain of your guests dine with you they have nothing to drink. Fouquet, in great surprise, looked at Gourville. What do you mean by that? I mean that your butler had not wine for all tastes, monsieur, and that M. de La Fontaine, M. Polisson, and M. Conrart do not drink when they come to the house. These gentlemen do not like strong wine. What is to be done then? Well, and therefore? Well then, I have found here a vin de Joigny which they like. I know they come here once a week to drink at the Image de Notre Dame. That is the reason I am making this provision. Fouquet had no more to say, he was convinced. Vattel, on his part, had much more to say without doubt, and it was plain he was getting warm. It is just as if you would reproach me, Monseigneur, for going to the Rue Planche Milbrae to fetch myself the cider M. Lauret drinks when he comes to dine at your house. Lauret drinks cider at my house, cried Fouquet, laughing. Certainly he does, monsieur, and that is the reason why he dines there with pleasure. Vattel, cried Fouquet, pressing the hand of his maître d'hôtel, you are a man. I thank you, Vattel, for having understood that at my house M. de La Fontaine, M. Conrart, and M. Lauret are as great as dukes and peers, as great as princes, greater than myself. Vattel, you are a good servant and I double your salary. Vattel did not even thank his master, he merely shrugged his shoulders a little, murmuring this superb sentiment, to be thanked for having done one's duty is humiliating. He is right, said Gourville as he drew Fouquet's attention by a gesture to another point. He showed him a low-built tumbril drawn by 2 horses, upon which rocked 2 strong gibbets bound together back to back by chains, whilst an archer, seated upon the crossbeam, suffered as well as he could, with his head cast down, the comments of 100 vagabonds, who guessed the destination of the gibbets, and were escorting them to the Hôtel de Ville. Fouquet started. It is decided, you see, said Gourville. But it is not done, replied Fouquet. Oh, do not flatter yourself, Monseigneur, if they have thus lulled your friendship and suspicions, if things have gone so far, you will be able to undo nothing. But I have not given my sanction. M. de Lyon has ratified for you. I will go to the Louvre. Oh no, you will not. Would you advise such baseness? Cried Fouquet. Would you advise me to abandon my friends? Would you advise me, whilst able to fight, to throw the arms I hold in my hand to the ground? I do not advise you to do anything of the kind, Monseigneur. Are you in a position to quit the post of superintendent at this moment? No. Well, if the king wishes to displace you, he will displace me absent as well as present. Yes, but you will not have insulted him. Yes, but I shall have been base. Now I am not willing that my friends should die, and they shall not die. For that it is necessary you should go to the Louvre, is it not? Gourville. Beware. Once at the Louvre, you will be forced to defend your friends openly, that is to say, to make a profession of faith, or you will be forced to abandon them irrevocably. Never. Pardon me, the king will propose the alternative to you rigorously, or else you will propose it to him yourself. That is true. That is the reason why conflict must be avoided. Let us return to Saint-Mandé, Monseigneur. Gourville, I will not stir from this place, where the crime is to be carried out, where my disgrace is to be accomplished. I will not stir, I say, till I have found some means of combating my enemies. Monseigneur, replied Gourville, you would excite my pity if I did not know you for one of the great spirits of this world. You possess 150 millions, you are equal to the king in position, and 150 millions his superior in money. Colbert has not even had the wit to have the will of Mazarin accepted. Now, when a man is the richest person in a kingdom and will take the trouble to spend the money, if things are done he does not like, it is because he is a poor man. Let us return to Saint-Mandé, I say. To consult with Polisson? We will. No, Monseigneur, to count your money. So be it, said Fouquet with angry eyes. Yes, yes, to Saint-Mandé. He got into his carriage again and Gourville with him. Upon their road, at the end of the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, they overtook the humble equipage of Vattel, who was quietly conveying home his vin de Joigny. The black horses, going at a swift pace, alarmed as they passed, the timid hack of the maître d'hôtel, who, putting his head out at the window, cried in a fright, "Take care of my bottles." Asterisk in the 5-volume edition, Volume 1 ends here. Chapter 57. The Gallery of Saint-Mandé. 50 persons were waiting for the superintendent. He did not even take the time to place himself in the hands of his valet de chambre for a minute, but from the perron went straight into the premier salon. There his friends were assembled in full chat. The intendant was about to order supper to be served, but, above all, The Abbé Fouquet watched for the return of his brother, and was endeavoring to do the honors of the house in his absence. Upon the arrival of the superintendent, a murmur of joy and affection was heard. Fouquet, full of affability, good humor, and munificence, was beloved by his poets, his artists, and his men of business. His brow, upon which his little court read, as upon that of a god, all the movements of his soul, and thence drew rules of conduct. His brow, upon which affairs of state never impressed a wrinkle, was this evening paler than usual, and more than one friendly eye remarked that pallor. Fouquet placed himself at the head of the table, and presided gaily during supper. He recounted Vadel's expedition to La Fontaine. He related the history of Menneville and the skinny fowl to Polisson, in such a manner that all the table heard it. A tempest of laughter and jokes ensued, which was only checked by a serious and even sad gesture from Polisson. The Abbé Fouquet, not being able to comprehend why his brother should have led the conversation in that direction, listened with all his ears, and sought in the countenance of Gourville, or in that of his brother, an explanation which nothing afforded him. Polisson took up the matter. "Did they mention M. Colbert then?" said he. "Why not?" replied Fouquet, "if true as it is said to be, that the king has made him his intendant?" Scarcely had Fouquet uttered these words with a marked intention, than an explosion broke forth among the guests. "The miser," said one. "The mean, pitiful fellow," said another. "The hypocrite," said a third. Polisson exchanged a meaning look with Fouquet. "Messrs," said he, "in truth we are abusing a man whom no one knows. It is neither charitable nor reasonable, and here is Monsieur le Surintendant, who, I am sure, agrees with me." "Entirely," replied Fouquet. "Let the fat fowls of M. Colbert alone. Our business today is with the faisans truffs of M. Vadel." This speech stopped the dark cloud which was beginning to throw its shade over the guests. Gourville succeeded so well in animating the poets with the vin de Joigny. The abbé, intelligent as a man who stands in need of his host's money, so enlivened the financiers and the men of the sword, that, amidst the vapors of this joy and the noise of conversation, inquietudes disappeared completely. The will of Cardinal Mazarin was the text of the conversation at the second course and dessert. Then Fouquet ordered bowls of sweetmeats and fountains of liquor to be carried into the salon adjoining the gallery. He led the way thither, conducting by the hand a lady, the queen by his preference, of the evening. The musicians then supped, and the promenades in the gallery and the gardens commenced, beneath a spring sky, mild and flower-scented. Polisson then approached the superintendent and said, "Something troubles Monseigneur?" "Greatly," replied the minister. "Ask Gourville to tell you what it is." Polisson, on turning round, found La Fontaine treading upon his heels. He was obliged to listen to a Latin verse, which the poet had composed upon Vadel. La Fontaine had, for an hour, been scanning this verse in all corners, seeking someone to pour it out upon advantageously. He thought he had caught Polisson, but the latter escaped him. He turned towards Sorel, who had himself just composed a quatrain in honor of the supper and the amphitryon. La Fontaine in vain endeavored to gain attention to his verses. Sorel wanted to obtain a hearing for his quatrain. He was obliged to retreat before M. Le Comte de Charost, whose arm Fouquet had just taken. L'Abbé Fouquet perceived that the poet, absent-minded as usual, was about to follow the two talkers, and he interposed. La Fontaine seized upon him and recited his verses. The abbé, who was quite innocent of Latin, nodded his head in cadence at every roll which La Fontaine impressed upon his body, according to the undulations of the dactyls and spondees. While this was going on behind the confiture basins, Fouquet related the event of the day to his son-in-law, M. de Charost. "We will send the idle and useless to look at the fireworks," said Polisson to Gourville, "whilst we converse here." "So be it," said Gourville, addressing 4 words to Vadel. The latter then led towards the gardens the major part of the beaux, the ladies and the chatterers, whilst the men walked in the gallery, lighted by 300 wax lights in the sight of all. The admirers of fireworks all ran away towards the garden. Gourville approached Fouquet and said, "Monsieur, we are here." "All?" said Fouquet. "Yes, count." The superintendent counted. There were 8 persons. Polisson and Gourville walked arm in arm, as if conversing upon vague and frivolous subjects. Sorel and 2 officers imitated them, and in an opposite direction. The Abbé Fouquet walked alone. Fouquet, with M. de Charost, walked as if entirely absorbed in the conversation of his son-in-law. "Messrs," said he, "let no one of you raise his head as he walks or appear to pay attention to me. Continue walking, we are alone, listen to me." A perfect silence ensued, disturbed only by the distant cries of the joyous guests, from the groves whence they beheld the fireworks. It was a whimsical spectacle this, of these men walking in groups, as if each one was occupied about something, whilst lending attention really only to one amongst them, who himself seemed to be speaking only to his companion. "Messrs," said Fouquet, "you have without doubt remarked the absence of two of my friends this evening, who were with us on Wednesday. For God's sake, Abbé, do not stop. It is not necessary to enable you to listen. Walk on, carrying your head in a natural way, and as you have excellent sight, place yourself at the window, and if anyone returns towards the gallery, give us notice by coughing." The abbé obeyed. "I have not observed their absence," said Polisson, who at this moment was turning his back to Fouquet and walking the other way. "I do not see M. Lyadat," said Sorel, "who pays me my pension." "And I," said the abbé at the window, "do not see M. Dimeris, who owes me 1,100 livres from our last game of Brelin. Sorel," continued Fouquet, walking bent and gloomily, "you will never receive your pension any more from M. Lyadat, and you, abbé, will never be paid you 1,100 livres by M. Dimeris, for both are doomed to die." "To die!" exclaimed the whole assembly, arrested in spite of themselves in the comedy they were playing by that terrible word. "Recover yourselves, messrs," said Fouquet, "for perhaps we are watched." "I said, to die." "To die," repeated Polisson. "What, the men I saw 6 days ago, full of health, gaiety, and the spirit of the future. What then is man, good God? That disease should thus bring him down all at once." "It is not a disease," said Fouquet. "Then there is a remedy," said Sorel. "No remedy. Messrs. de Lyadat and Dimeris are on the eve of their last day." "Of what are these gentlemen dying then?" asked an officer. "Ask of him who kills them," replied Fouquet. "Who kills them? Are they being killed then?" cried the terrified chorus. "They do better still, they are hanging them," murmured Fouquet in a sinister voice, which sounded like a funeral knell in that rich gallery, splendid with pictures, flowers, velvet, and gold. Involuntarily everyone stopped. The abbé quitted his window. The first fuses of the fireworks began to mount above the trees. A prolonged cry from the gardens attracted the superintendent to enjoy the spectacle. He drew near to a window, and his friends placed themselves behind him, attentive to his least wish. "Messrs," said he, "M. Colbert has cause to be arrested, tried, and will execute my two friends. What does it become me to do?" "Mordieu!" exclaimed the abbé, the first one to speak. "Run M. Colbert through the body." "Monseigneur," said Polisson, "you must speak to his majesty." "The king, my dear Polisson, himself signed the order for the execution." "Well," said the Comte de Charost, "the execution must not take place then, that is all." "Impossible," said Gourville, "unless we could corrupt the jailers." "Or the governor," said Fouquet. "This night the prisoners might be allowed to escape. Which of you will take charge of the transaction?" "I," said the abbé, "will carry the money." "And I," said Polisson, "will be the bearer of the words." "Words and money," said Fouquet. 500,000 livres to the governor of the conciergerie, that is sufficient. Nevertheless, it shall be 1,000,000 if necessary." "A million!" cried the abbé. "Why, for less than half I would have half Paris sacked." "There must be no disorder," said Polisson. "The governor being gained, the two prisoners escape. Once clear of the fangs of the law, they will call together the enemies of Colbert, and prove to the king that his young justice, like all other monstrosities, is not infallible." "Go to Paris then, Polisson," said Fouquet, "and bring hither the two victims. Tomorrow we shall see." Gourville gave Polisson the 500,000 livres. "Take care the wind does not carry you away," said the abbé. "What a responsibility!" "Best, let me help you a little." "Silence," said Fouquet, "somebody is coming." The fireworks are producing a magical effect. At this moment a shower of sparks fell rustling among the branches of the neighboring trees. Polisson and Gourville went out together by the door of the gallery. Fouquet descended to the garden with the 5 last plotters. Chapter 58. Epicureans. As Fouquet was giving, or appearing to give, all his attention to the brilliant illuminations, the languishing music of the violins and hautboys, the sparkling sheaves of the artificial fires, which, inflaming the heavens with glowing reflections, marked behind the trees the dark profile of the dungeon of Vincennes. As we say, the superintendent was smiling on the ladies and the poets. The fete was every whit as gay as usual. Anne Vattel, whose restless, even jealous look earnestly consulted the aspect of Fouquet, did not appear dissatisfied with the welcome given to the ordering of the evening's entertainment. The fireworks over, The company dispersed about the gardens and beneath the marble porticos with the delightful liberty which reveals in the master of the house so much forgetfulness of greatness, so much courteous hospitality, so much magnificent carelessness. The poets wandered about arm in arm through the groves. Some reclined upon beds of moss, to the great damage of velvet clothes and curled heads, into which little dried leaves and blades of grass insinuated themselves. The ladies, in small numbers, listened to the songs of the singers and the verses of the poets. Others listened to the prose, spoken with much art by men who were neither actors nor poets, but to whom youth and solitude gave an unaccustomed eloquence, which appeared to them better than everything else in the world. "Why," said La Fontaine, "does not our master Epicurus descend into the garden? Epicurus never abandoned his pupils. The master is wrong." "Monsieur," said Conrart, "you yourself are in the wrong persisting in decorating yourself with the name of an Epicurean. Indeed, nothing here reminds me of the doctrine of the philosopher of Gargetta." "Bah," said La Fontaine, "is it not written that Epicurus purchased a large garden and lived in it tranquilly with his friends?" "That is true." "Well, has not M. Fouquet purchased a large garden at Saint-Mandé, and do we not live here very tranquilly with him and his friends?" "Yes, without doubt. Unfortunately it is neither the garden nor the friends which constitute the resemblance. Now, what likeness is there between the doctrine of Epicurus and that of M. Fouquet? This, pleasure gives happiness. Next. Well, I do not think we ought to consider ourselves unfortunate, for my part at least. A good repast, vin de joigny, which they have the delicacy to go and fetch for me from my favorite cabaret, not one impertinence heard during a supper an hour long, in spite of the presence of 10 millionaires and 20 poets. I stop you there. You mention vin de joigny and a good repast. Do you persist in that? I persist, antico as they say at Port Royal. Then please to recollect that the great Epicurus lived, and made his pupils live, upon bread, vegetables, and water. That is not certain, said La Fontaine, and you appear to me to be confounding Epicurus with Pythagoras, my dear Conrart. Remember likewise, that the ancient philosopher was rather a bad friend of the gods and the magistrates. Oh, that is what I will not admit, replied La Fontaine. Epicurus was like M. Fouquet. Do not compare him to Monsieur le Surintendant, said Conrart in an agitated voice, or you would accredit the reports which are circulating concerning him and us. What reports? That we are bad Frenchmen, lukewarm with regard to the king, deaf to the law. I return then to my text, said La Fontaine. Listen, Conrart, this is the morality of Epicurus, whom besides I consider, if I must tell you so, as a myth. Antiquity is mostly mythical. Jupiter, if we give a little attention to it, is life. Alcides is strength. The words are there to bear me out. Zeus, that is zen, to live. Alcides, that is als, vigor. Well, Epicurus, that is mild watchfulness, that is protection. Now who watches better over the state, or who protects individuals better than M. Fouquet does? You talk etymology and not morality. I say that we modern Epicureans are indifferent citizens. Oh, cried La Fontaine, if we become bad citizens, it is not through following the maxims of our master. Listen to one of his principal aphorisms. I will pray for good leaders. Well, what does M. Fouquet say to us every day? When shall we be governed? Does he say so? Come, Conrart, be frank. He says so, that is true. Well, that is a doctrine of Epicurus. Yes, but that is a little seditious, observe. What? Seditious to wish to be governed by good heads or leaders. Certainly when those who govern are bad. Patience, I have a reply for all. Even for what I have just said to you? Listen. Would you submit to those who govern ill? It is written, Kakos politousi. You grant me the text. Pardieu? I think so. Do you know, you speak Greek as well as Aesop did, my dear La Fontaine? Is there any wickedness in that, my dear Conrart? God forbid I should say so. Then let us return to M. Fouquet. What did he repeat to us all the day? Was it not this? What a quister is that Mazarine! What an ass! What a leech! We must, however, submit to that fellow. Now, Conrart, did he say so or did he not? I confess that he said it, and even perhaps too often. Like Epicurus, my friend, still like Epicurus. I repeat, we are Epicureans, and that is very amusing. Yes, but I am afraid there will rise up, by the side of us, a sect like that of Epictetus. You know him well, the philosopher of Hierapolis, he who called bread luxury, vegetables prodigality, and clear water drunkenness. He who, being beaten by his master, said to him, grumbling a little it is true but without being angry, I will lay a wager you have broken my leg. And who won his wager? He was a goose, that fellow Epictetus. Granted, but he might easily become the fashion by only changing his name into that of Colbert. Bah, replied La Fontaine, that is impossible. Never will you find Colbert in Epictetus. You are right, I shall find Colubert there at the most. Bah. You are beaten, Conrart, you are reduced to a play upon words. Arnaud pretends that I have no logic, I have more than M. Nicole. Yes, replied Conrart, you have logic, but you are a Jansenist. This peroration was hailed with a boisterous shout of laughter. By degrees the promenaders had been attracted by the exclamations of the two disputants around the arbor under which they were arguing. The discussion had been religiously listened to, and Fouquet himself, scarcely able to suppress his laughter, had given an example of moderation. But with the denouement of the scene he threw off all restraint and laughed aloud. Everybody laughed as he did, and the two philosophers were saluted with unanimous felicitations. La Fontaine, however, was declared conqueror, on account of his profound erudition and his irrefragable logic. Conrart obtained the compensation due to an unsuccessful combatant. He was praised for the loyalty of his intentions and the purity of his conscience. At the moment when this jollity was manifesting itself by the most lively demonstrations, when the ladies were reproaching the two adversaries with not having admitted women into the system of Epicurean happiness, Gourville was seen hastening from the other end of the garden, approaching Fouquet and detaching him by his presence alone from the group. The superintendent preserved on his face the smile and character of carelessness, but scarcely was he out of sight than he threw off the mask. "Well," said he eagerly, "where is Polisson? What is he doing?" "Polisson has returned from Paris." "Has he brought back the prisoners?" "He has not even seen the concierge of the prison." "What? Did he not tell him he came from me?" "He told him so, but the concierge sent him this reply: if anyone came to me from M. Fouquet, he would have a letter from M. Fouquet." "Oh," cried the latter, "if a letter is all he wants—" "It is useless, monsieur," said Polisson, showing himself at the corner of the little wood. "Useless. Go yourself and speak in your own name." "You're right. I will go in as if to work. Let the horses remain harnessed, Polisson. Entertain my friends, Gourville." "One last word of advice, monseigneur," replied the latter. "Speak, Gourville." "Do not go to the concierge save at the last minute. It is brave, but it is not wise. Excuse me, Monsieur Polisson, if I am not of the same opinion as you, but take my advice, monseigneur, send again a message to this concierge. He is a worthy man, but do not carry it yourself." "I will think of it," said Fouquet. "Besides, we have all the night before us. Do not reckon too much on time. Were the hours we have twice as many as they are, they would not be too much," replied Polisson. "It is never a fault to arrive too soon." "Adieu," said the superintendent. "Come with me, Polisson. Gourville, I commend my guests to your care." And he set off. The Epicureans did not perceive that the head of the school had left them. The violins continued playing all night long. Chapter 59. A quarter of an hour's delay. Fouquet, on leaving his house for the second time that day, felt himself less heavy and less disturbed than might have been expected. He turned towards Polisson, who was meditating in the corner of the carriage some good arguments against the violent proceedings of Colbert. "My dear Polisson," said Fouquet, "it is a great pity you are not a woman." "I think, on the contrary, it is very fortunate," replied Polisson, "for, monseigneur, I am excessively ugly." "Polisson, Polisson," said the superintendent, laughing, "you repeat too often you are ugly, not to leave people to believe that it gives you much pain." "In fact it does, monseigneur, much pain. There is no man more unfortunate than I. I was handsome, the smallpox rendered me hideous. I am deprived of a great means of attraction. Now I am your principal clerk or something of that sort. I take great interest in your affairs, and if at this moment I were a pretty woman, I could render you an important service." "What?" "I would go and find the concierge of the Palais. I would seduce him, for he is a gallant man, extravagantly partial to women. Then I would get away our two prisoners." "I hope to be able to do so myself, although I am not a pretty woman," replied Fouquet. "Granted, monseigneur, but you are compromising yourself very much." "Oh," cried Fouquet suddenly, with one of those secret transports which the generous blood of youth, or the remembrance of some sweet emotion, infuses into the heart. "Oh, I know a woman who will enact the personage we stand in need of, with the lieutenant governor of the concierge. And on my part, I know 50, monseigneur, 50 trumpets, which will inform the universe of your generosity, of your devotion to your friends, and consequently, will ruin you sooner or later in ruining themselves. I do not speak of such women, Polisson. I speak of a noble and beautiful creature who joins to the intelligence and wit of her sex the valor and coolness of ours. I speak of a woman handsome enough to make the walls of a prison bow down to salute her, discreet enough to let no one suspect by whom she has been sent. A treasure, said Polisson. You would make a famous present to Monsieur the Governor of the Concierge. Best. Monseigneur, he might have his head cut off, but he would, before dying, have had such happiness as no man had enjoyed before him. And I add, said Fouquet, that the concierge of the Palais would not have his head cut off, for he would receive of me my horses, to effect his escape, and 500,000 livres wherewith to live comfortably in England. I add that this lady, my friend, would give him nothing but the horses and the money. Let us go and seek her, Polisson. The superintendent reached forth his hand towards the golden and silken cord placed in the interior of his carriage, but Polisson stopped him. Monseigneur, said he, you are going to lose as much time in seeking this lady as Columbus took to discover the New World. Now we have but 2 hours in which we can possibly succeed. The concierge once gone to bed, how shall we get at him without making a disturbance? When daylight dawns, how can we conceal our proceedings? Go yourself, Monseigneur, and do not seek either woman or angel tonight. But, my dear Polisson, here we are before her door. What? Before the angel's door? Why, yes. This is the hotel of Madame de Belliere. Hush. Ah, good Lord, exclaimed Polisson. What have you to say against her? Nothing, alas. And it is that which causes my despair. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Why can I not, on the contrary, say ill enough of her to prevent your going to her? But Fouquet had already given orders to stop, and the carriage was motionless. Prevent me, cried Fouquet. Why, no power on earth should prevent my going to pay my compliments to Madame de Plessis-Belliere. Besides, who knows that we shall not stand in need of her? No, Monseigneur, no. But I do not wish you to wait for me, Polisson, replied Fouquet, sincerely courteous. The more reason I should, Monseigneur, knowing that you are keeping me waiting, you will, perhaps, stay a shorter time. Take care. You see there is a carriage in the courtyard. She has someone with her. Fouquet leaned towards the steps of the carriage. One word more, cried Polisson. Do not go to this lady till you have been to the concierge, for heaven's sake. 5 minutes, Polisson, replied Fouquet, alighting at the steps of the hotel, leaving Polisson in the carriage in a very ill humor. Fouquet ran upstairs, told his name to the footman, which excited an eagerness and a respect that showed the habit the mistress of the house had of honoring that name in her family. Monsieur le Surintendant, cried the Marquise, advancing very pale to meet him. What an honor! What an unexpected pleasure, said she. Then in a low voice, take care, added the Marquise, Marguerite Vanel is here. Madame, replied Fouquet rather agitated, I came on business. One single word and quickly if you please. And he entered the salon. Madame Vanel had risen, paler, more livid than envy herself. Fouquet in vain addressed her, with the most agreeable, most pacific salutation. She only replied by a terrible glance darted at the Marquise and Fouquet. This keen glance of a jealous woman is a stiletto which pierces every cuirass. Marguerite Vanel plunged it straight into the hearts of the two confidants. She made a courtesy to her friend, a more profound one to Fouquet, and took leave, under pretense of having a number of visits to make, without the Marquise trying to prevent her, or Fouquet, a prey to anxiety, thinking further about her. She was scarcely out of the room, and Fouquet left alone with the Marquise, before he threw himself on his knees without saying a word. I expected you, said the Marquise with a tender sigh. Oh, no, cried he, or you would have sent away that woman. She has been here little more than half an hour, and I had no expectation she would come this evening. You love me just a little then, Marquise? That is not the question now, it is of your danger. How are your affairs going on? I am going this evening to get my friends out of the prisons of the Palais. How will you do that? By buying and bribing the governor. He is a friend of mine. Can I assist you without injuring you? Oh, Marquise, it would be a signal service, but how can you be employed without your being compromised? Now, never shall my life, my power, or even my liberty, be purchased at the expense of a single tear from your eyes, or of one frown of pain upon your brow. Monseigneur, no more such words, they bewilder me. I have been culpable in trying to serve you, without calculating the extent of what I was doing. I love you in reality as a tender friend, and as a friend I am grateful for your delicate attentions, but alas, alas, you will never find a mistress in me. Marquise, cried Fouquet in a tone of despair, Why not? Because you are too much beloved, said the young woman in a low voice. Because you are too much beloved by too many people, because the splendor of glory and fortune wound my eyes, whilst the darkness of sorrow attracts them. Because, in short, I who have repulsed you in your proud magnificence, I who scarcely looked at you in your splendor, I came like a mad woman to throw myself as it were into your arms, when I saw a misfortune hovering over your head. You understand me now, Monseigneur? Become happy again, that I may remain chaste in heart and in thought. Your misfortune entails my ruin. Oh, Madam, said Fouquet with an emotion he had never before felt, were I to fall to the lowest degree of human misery, and hear from your mouth that word which you now refuse me, that day, madam, you will be mistaken in your noble egotism. That day you will fancy you are consoling the most unfortunate of men, and you will have said, I love you, to the most illustrious, the most delighted, the most triumphant of the happy beings of this world. He was still at her feet, kissing her hand, when Polisson entered precipitately, crying in very ill humor, Monseigneur, madam, for heaven's sake, excuse me. Monseigneur, you have been here half an hour. Do not both look at me so reproachfully. Madam, pray who is that lady who left your house soon after Monseigneur came in? Madame Vanel, said Fouquet. Ha! cried Polisson, I was sure of that. Well, what then? Why, she got into her carriage looking deadly pale. What consequence is that to me? Yes, but what she said to her coachman is of consequence to you. Kind heaven, cried the Marquise, what was that? To M. Colbert's, said Polisson in a hoarse voice. Bon Dieu, begone, begone, Monseigneur, replied the Marquise, pushing Fouquet out of the salon, whilst Polisson dragged him by the hand. Am I then indeed, said the superintendent, become a child to be frightened by a shadow? You are a giant, said the Marquise, whom a viper is trying to bite in the heel. Polisson continued to drag Fouquet to the carriage. To the Palais at full speed, cried Polisson to the coachman. The horses set off like lightning. No obstacle relaxed their pace for an instant. Only at the Arcade Saint-Jean, as they were coming out upon the Place de Grève, a long file of horsemen, barring the narrow passage, stopped the carriage of the superintendent. There was no means of forcing this barrier. It was necessary to wait till the mounted archers of the watch, for it was they who stopped the way, had passed with the heavy carriage they were escorting, and which ascended rapidly towards the Place Baudoyer. Fouquet and Polisson took no further account of this circumstance beyond deploring the minute's delay they had thus to submit to. They entered the habitation of the concierge du Palais 5 minutes after. That officer was still walking about in the front court. At the name of Fouquet whispered in his ear by Polisson, the governor eagerly approached the carriage and, hat in hand, was profuse in his attentions. What an honor for me, Monseigneur, said he. One word, Monsieur le Gouverneur, will you take the trouble to get into my carriage? The officer placed himself opposite Fouquet in the coach. Monsieur, said Fouquet, I have a service to ask of you. Speak, Monseigneur. A service that will be compromising for you, Monsieur, but which will assure to you forever my protection and my friendship. Were it to cast myself into the fire for you, Monseigneur, I would do it. That is well, said Fouquet. What I require is much more simple. That being so, Monseigneur, what is it? To conduct me to the chamber of Messrs. Liaudot and Diemeris. Will Monseigneur have the kindness to say for what purpose? I will tell you that in their presence, Monsieur, at the same time that I will give you ample means of palliating this escape. Escape? Why then Monseigneur does not know. What? That Messrs. Liaudot and Diemeris are no longer here. Since when? Cried Fouquet in great agitation. About a quarter of an hour. Whither have they gone then? To Vincennes, to the dungeon. Who took them from here? An order from the king. Oh, whoa, whoa, exclaimed Fouquet, striking his forehead. Whoa, and without saying a single word more to the governor, he threw himself back into his carriage, despair in his heart and death on his countenance. Well, said Polisson with great anxiety, our friends are lost. Colbert is conveying them to the dungeon. They crossed our path under the Arcade Saint-Jean. Polisson, struck as by a thunderbolt, made no reply. With a single reproach he would have killed his master. Where is Monseigneur going? Said the footman. Home to Paris. You, Polisson, return to Saint-Mandé, and bring the Abbé Fouquet to me within an hour. Begone. Chapter 60. Plan of Battle. The night was already far advanced when the Abbé Fouquet joined his brother. Gourville had accompanied him. These 3 men, pale with dread of future events, resembled less 3 powers of the day than 3 conspirators, united by one single thought of violence. Fouquet walked for a long time with his eyes fixed upon the floor, striking his hands one against the other. At length, taking courage in the midst of a deep sigh, "Abbé," said he, "you were speaking to me only today of certain people you maintain." "Yes, monsieur," replied the abbé. "Tell me precisely who are these people." The abbé hesitated. "Come. No fear, I am not threatening, no romancing, for I am not joking. Since you demand the truth, monseigneur, here it is. I have 120 friends or companions of pleasure, who are sworn to me as the thief is to the gallows. And you think you can depend on them? Entirely. And you will not compromise yourself? I will not even make my appearance. Are they men of resolution? They would burn Paris if I promised them they should not be burnt in turn. The thing I ask of you, abbé, said Fouquet, wiping the sweat which fell from his brow, is to throw your 120 men upon the people I will point out to you at a certain moment given. Is it possible? It will not be the first time such a thing has happened to them, monseigneur. That is well, but would these bandits attack an armed force? They are used to that. Then get your 120 men together, abbé. Directly. But where? On the road to Vincennes tomorrow at 2 o'clock precisely. To carry off Lyaudot and Diomeris? There will be blows to be got. A number, no doubt. Are you afraid? Not for myself, but for you. Your men will know then what they have to do. They are too intelligent not to guess it. Now, a minister who gets up a riot against his king, exposes himself. Of what importance is that to you, I pray? Besides, if I fall, you fall with me. It would then be more prudent, monsieur, not to stir in the affair, and leave the king to take this little satisfaction. Think well of this, Abbé. Lyaudot and Diomeris at Vincennes are a prelude of ruin for my house. I repeat it, I arrested, you will be imprisoned, I imprisoned, you will be exiled. Monsieur, I am at your orders. Have you any to give me? What I told you, I wish that, tomorrow, the 2 financiers of whom they mean to make victims, whilst there remain so many criminals unpunished, should be snatched from the fury of my enemies. Take your measures accordingly. Is it possible? It is possible. Describe your plan. It is of rich simplicity. The ordinary guard at executions consists of 12 archers. There will be 100 tomorrow. I reckon so. I even say more, there will be 200. Then your 120 men will not be enough. Pardon me. In every crowd composed of 100,000 spectators, there are 10,000 bandits or cut purses, only they dare not take the initiative. Well? There will then be, tomorrow, on the Place de Grève, which I choose as my battlefield, 10,000 auxiliaries to my 120 men. The attack commenced by the latter, the others will finish it. That all appears feasible. But what will be done with regard to the prisoners upon the Place de Grève? This, they must be thrust into some house, that will make a siege necessary to get them out again. And stop. Here is another idea, more sublime still. Certain houses have 2 issues, one upon the place and the other into the Rue de la Mortellerie or la Vannerie or la Tixeranderie. The prisoners entering by one door will go out at another. Yes, but fix upon something positive. I am seeking to do so. And I, cried Fouquet, I have found it. Listen to what has occurred to me at this moment. I am listening. Fouquet made a sign to Gourville, who appeared to understand. One of my friends lends me sometimes the keys of a house which he rents, Rue Baudoyer, the spacious gardens of which extend behind a certain house on the Place de Grève. That is the place for us, said the abbé. What house? A cabaret pretty well frequented, whose sign represents the image of Notre Dame. I know it, said the abbé. This cabaret has windows opening upon the place, a place of exit into the court, which must abut upon the gardens of my friend by a door of communication. Good, said the abbé. Enter by the cabaret, take the prisoners in, defend the door while you enable them to fly by the garden and the Place Baudoyer. That is all plain. Monsieur, you would make an excellent general like Monsieur le Prince. Have you understood me? Perfectly well. How much will it amount to make your bandits all drunk with wine, and to satisfy them with gold? Oh, monsieur, what an expression! Monsieur, if they heard you. Some of them are very susceptible. I mean to say they must be brought to the point where they cannot tell the heavens from the earth, for I shall tomorrow contend with the king, and when I fight I mean to conquer, please to understand. It shall be done, monsieur. Give me your other ideas. That is your business. Then give me your purse. Gourville, count 100,000 livres for the abbé. Good. And spare nothing, did you not say? Nothing. That is well. Monseigneur, objected Gourville, if this should be known we should lose our heads. Gourville, replied Fouquet, purple with anger, you excite my pity. Speak for yourself if you please. My head does not shake in that manner upon my shoulders. Now, Abbé, is everything arranged? Everything. At 2 o'clock tomorrow. At 12, because it will be necessary to prepare our auxiliaries in a secret manner. That is true, do not spare the wine of the cabaretier. I will spare neither his wine nor his house, replied the Abbé with a sneering laugh. I have my plan, I tell you, leave me to set it in operation and you shall see. Where shall you be yourself? Everywhere, nowhere. And how shall I receive information? By a courier whose horse shall be kept in the very same garden of your friend. Apropos, the name of your friend. Fouquet looked again at Gourville. The latter came to the succor of his master, saying, the name is of no importance. Fouquet continued, accompany Monsieur l'Abbé for several reasons, but the house is easily to be known, the image de Notre Dame in the front, a garden, the only one in the quarter behind. Asterisk. The text in the print copy is corrupt at this point. The suggested reading, in brackets, is by John Bursey. Good. I will go and give notice to my soldiers. Accompany him, Gourville, said Fouquet, and count him down the money. One moment, Abbé, one moment, Gourville. What name will be given to this carrying off? A very natural one, monsieur, the riot. The riot on account of what? For if ever the people of Paris are disposed to pay their court to the king, it is when he hangs financiers. I will manage that, said the Abbé. Yes, but you may manage it badly and people will guess. Not at all, not at all. I have another idea. What is that? My men shall cry out, Colbert, vive Colbert, and shall throw themselves upon the prisoners as if they would tear them in pieces, and shall force them from the gibbets as too mild a punishment. Ah, that is an idea, said Gourville. Peste. Monsieur l'Abbé, what an imagination you have. Monsieur, we are worthy of our family, replied the Abbé proudly. Strange fellow, murmured Fouquet. Then he added, that is ingenious. Carry it out, but shed no blood. Gourville and the Abbé set off together, with their heads full of the meditated riot. The superintendent laid himself down upon some cushions, half valiant with respect to the sinister projects of the morrow, half dreaming of love.